Hey guys, imagine this. You're sailing the high seas in the golden age of piracy, the wind whipping through your hair, treasures glittering in the hold below. But wait, lurking in the shadows of those creaking decks aren't just scurvy-ridden buccaneers, but women forgotten by history, trading their bodies for survival in a world of cutthroats and cannon fire. What if I told you the real pirate's life wasn't all rum and gold, but a twisted tango of desperation, disease, and defiance? Buckle up, because we're about to unearth the absurd, heartbreaking truth of prostitutes on pirate ships, a story so wild it'll make Blackbeard blush. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. The romantic allure of piracy, swashbuckling heroes with parrots on their shoulders, hoisting the Jolly Roger and yelling "Avast" as they plunder Spanish galleons. But let's peel back that Hollywood varnish, shall we? Because beneath the myth lies a gritty, grimy reality where survival was a daily dice roll, and for some, the stakes were higher than a crow's nest. We're talking about the women who dared, or were forced, to step aboard those floating hellholes known as pirate ships. Prostitutes, they were called, but that word barely scratches the surface of their forgotten lives. These weren't glamorous sirens luring men to their doom. They were survivors navigating a man's world with nothing but wit, wiles, and a whole lot of whispered prayers to whatever god hadn't abandoned them yet. Picture the scene. It's the early 1700s, the Caribbean Sea, a boiling pot of empires clashing, British, Spanish, French, all vying for control, while pirates like Edward Teach, that's Blackbeard to you, turned the waters into their personal playground. Ships were wooden behemoths, reeking of tar, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of blood from the last raid. Superstition ruled the waves. Sailors believed women aboard brought bad luck, storms, or worse, mutiny. Yet, here they were, these shadowy figures slipping onto decks under the cover of night, or hidden in port taverns where deals were struck with a wink and a flask of grog. Why on earth would a woman join a pirate crew? Oh, the irony drips like bilge water. For many, it started on land, in the squalid ports of Nassau or Port Royal, places where civilization was just a fancy word for organized chaos. These were boomtowns built on stolen gold, where brothels sprouted like barnacles on a hull. A young lass might arrive from England, indentured and dreaming of a new life, only to find herself sold into service by a lecherous captain or abandoned by a faithless lover. Poverty was the great equalizer. It didn't care if you were born in a London slum or a Jamaican plantation. Hunger gnawed at your belly, and the streets offered two choices, beg or bed. But begging, that was for the weak. These women chose the latter, honing their craft in smoke-filled dens where sailors fresh from months at sea threw coins like confetti. Enter the pirates, those charming rogues who promised freedom from the noose of society. "Join us, lass," they'd slur, eyes gleaming with rum-fueled bravado. No laws on the open sea, just gold and glory. What a load of codswallop. The truth? Pirates needed women for more than morale boosts. Ships were isolated worlds, months without sight of land, and crews craved companionship that went beyond arm wrestling and sea shanties. Prostitutes became unofficial crew members, bartering their bodies for protection, food, and a cut of the loot. But protection? Ha! In a world where a single storm could splinter your home into driftwood, protection was as reliable as a pirate's promise. Let's meet our first forgotten soul. Call her Eliza, a composite of the nameless women history swept under the rug. Eliza wasn't her real name. Pirates loved aliases, after all, but it'll do. Born in Bristol around 1690, she crossed the Atlantic as a servant, only to be discarded in Jamaica when her master found a cheaper replacement. Port Royal in 1710 was a den of iniquity, rebuilt after the 1692 earthquake that swallowed half the city like a biblical judgment. Taverns like the Wicked Wench overflowed with buccaneers, their pockets heavy with doubloons from raiding Spanish treasure fleets. Eliza learned quickly, a smile could earn a meal, a touch a coin, but survival meant reading the room like a navigator reads stars. One fateful night, in walks, Captain Bartholomew, Black Bart Roberts, Yes, the real deal. The most successful pirate of the era, capturing over 400 ships. But in our tale, he's not the star, he's the catalyst. Robert's crew, fresh from sacking a Portuguese vessel, caroused like kings. Eliza caught the eye of the quartermaster, a burly Scot named McTavish, who whispered tales of endless horizons and shared spoils. No more scraping by in this hellhole, he promised. Come aboard the Royal Fortune, we'll treat you like one of us. Oh, the absurdity. One of us meant sleeping in hammocks swaying with the ship, dodging rats the size of cats and enduring the stench of unwashed bodies packed like sardines. Boarding a pirate ship was no grand adventure. It was stepping into a floating madhouse. The Articles of Agreement, pirate codes drawn up democratically, often banned women outright, citing that old superstition. But rules were made to be bent, especially when the captain turned a blind eye. Eliza smuggled herself aboard in a barrel of salted pork, emerging like a jack-in-the-box to the crew's mix of leers and laughs. "Bad luck," some grumbled. "Treasure," others cheered. And so began her life at sea, a bizarre blend of drudgery and danger. Daily life? Forget the myths. Morning started with the bosun's whistle piercing your skull like a dagger. Eliza scrubbed decks alongside the swabs, her hands raw from salt water and splinters. Pirates weren't lazy. Discipline was ironclad, enforced by the cat-o'-nine-tails for infractions. Food was a joke. Hardtack biscuits crawling with weevils, salted meat tougher than leather boots. Scurvy turned gums to mush, teeth falling out like autumn leaves, and the water, stagnant, green, and flavored with whatever leaked from the bilges. Eliza traded favors for extra rations, a grim calculus of calories versus dignity. But oh, the pain of it all. Isolation gnawed at the soul. Weeks without land, the horizon a mocking infinity. Storms tossed the ship like a cork, waves crashing over rails, drenching everything in icy terror. Men screamed prayers to Neptune, while Eliza clung to ropes, her dress, torn and patched, clinging like a second skin. Disease was the silent killer. Syphilis spread like wildfire, courtesy of port visits, leaving bodies twisted and minds addled. No doctors aboard, just the carpenter doubling as surgeon, sawing limbs with rum as anesthetic. Eliza nursed the afflicted, her touch a rare comfort in a world of brutality. But she knew the score. One wrong move, and she'd be next. Yet, amid the horror, sparks of absurdity lit the darkness. Pirates loved their theatrics. Blackbeard braided his beard with fuses, lighting them to terrify foes. Imagine Eliza helping with that, fingers trembling as she tied ribbons of gunpowder. Raids were chaotic ballets, cannons booming, grapnels flying, boarding parties swinging like monkeys. Eliza stayed below during battles, heart pounding, but afterward, the spoils. Chests bursting with silks, jewels, spices. For a moment, she felt rich, draping herself in stolen finery, laughing with the crew over flagons of captured wine. To the ladies of the sea, they'd toast, ignoring the irony that she was the only one. But survival's pain cut deep. Prostitution aboard wasn't romance, it was transaction. Crews rotated visits like watch duties, paying in trinkets or promises. Jealousy brewed mutinies, fights over her favor ending in duels on deck, blood staining the planks. Eliza walked a tightrope, too aloof, and she'd starve, too generous, and she'd be seen as weak. And the captains? Power corrupted absolutely. Some, like Calico Jack Rackham, tolerated women. Hell, he sailed with Anne Bonny and Mary Red, disguised as men until their bellies swelled with child. But others viewed them as disposable, tossing them overboard if bad luck struck. Speaking of Anne and Mary, let's detour into their legend for a dose of historical absurdity. These two firebrands joined Rackham's crew in 1720, fighting fiercer than any man. Anne, fiery Irish lass, left her husband for the pirate life. Mary, raised as a boy, enlisted in armies before turning to the seas. They brawled, swore, and loved with abandon, their pregnancies revealed only at trial. Hanged? Rackham was, but the women pleaded their bellies. Pregnancy stayed the noose. Absurd, right? In a world where women were property, they wielded cutlasses and commanded respect. Eliza idolized them from afar. whispering their tales to boost her spirits. Back to our ship. The royal fortune under Roberts was a floating democracy. Votes on everything from course to punishments. Eliza earned a voice of sorts, advising on ports where entertainment awaited. But democracy had teeth. One vote gone wrong, and you danced the hempen jig. Roberts himself was a teetotaler, ironic for a pirate, banning drunkenness while his crew snuck sips. Eliza mediated brawls, her sarcasm a weapon. Fight over me, lads. Save it for the Spaniards. They pay better. The seas were lawless, but empires hunted. Naval patrols from Britain and Spain turned hunts into chases, ships splintering under broadsides. Eliza witnessed horrors, captured pirates keel-hauled, dragged under the hull to emerge shredded by barnacles, or worse, gibbeted in irons at harbor entrances, bodies rotting as warnings. Fear was constant, a cold fist in her gut. Yet she adapted, learning knots, navigation, even firing a pistol. Survival's pain forged resilience. She became more pirate than prostitute, her body a battleground, her mind a fortress. Ports offered brief respite and fresh absurdities. Nassau, pirate republic extraordinaire, was a carnival of vice. Governors turned blind eyes for bribes, while the merchants fenced loot. Eliza disembarked like a queen, bartering for perfumes, fabrics, anything to mask the ship's stench. But ports bred betrayal. Informers lurked, ready to sell out for a pardon. One wrong lover and the hangman beckoned. Love? Ha! In this nightmare, it was a luxury. Eliza's heart fluttered for McTavish, the quartermaster who smuggled her aboard. Stolen moments below decks, whispers amid cannon drills. But piracy poisoned romance, jealousy, raids, death. McTavish fell in a skirmish off Brazil, gutted by a cutlass. Eliza mourned in silence, tears mixing with sea spray. Pain's irony, in a world of freedom, loss chained you tighter. As weeks blurred into months, Eliza pondered escape. Land beckoned with stability, but what waited? Back to brothels, or worse, the gallows if branded a pirate's whore. The absurdity peaked during a raid on a slave ship, pirates freeing captives for crew, while Eliza pondered her own chains. Hypocrisy at sea, liberators who enslaved desires. Diving deeper, let's unpack the economics of it all, because nothing screams absurdity like pirate finance. Booty divided by shares, captain 2, quartermaster 1.5, crew 1 each. Eliza? A half share, if lucky, for services rendered. Gold doubloons, silver pieces of 8, currency of blood. But inflation? Ports jacked prices, knowing pirates paid premium. A dress cost a fortune, medicine, priceless amid outbreaks. Health's horror, no antibiotics, just herbal poultices and prayer. Venereal diseases ravaged crews, blindness and madness following. Eliza brewed remedies from captured goods, cinnamon for infections, mercury for syphilis, toxic cure worse than disease. Pain's sarcasm, live fast, die young, leave a scarred corpse. Social dynamics? A farce. Pirates aped nobility, fancy coats over rags, toasting with crystal goblets from plundered manors. Eliza played lady, her wit disarming egos. You think you're kings? She'd quip. Kings don't sleep with rats. Webby's laughter masked terror. One mutiny, and heads rolled. Cultural clashes added spice. Crews multinational, English, Dutch, African freedmen. Eliza learned pidgin tongues, bridging divides. Absurd rituals, burying treasure with curses, or marooning traitors on islands with a pistol and bottle. She witnessed one, a lad left screaming as the ship sailed away. Survival's brutality. As our first part winds down, reflect on Eliza's evolution, from port drudge to sea siren. But the nightmare deepens, raids grow bolder, navies closer. What's next? A storm that tests souls? A betrayal that shatters trust? Drop a comment. Would you survive a day on a pirate ship? Share your thoughts below. It keeps the conversation sailing. Yet the seas call us back. Robert's fleet grew, capturing sloops like collecting shells. Eliza adapted, her irony a shield. Another day, another dollar or doubloon. Pain lingered, scars invisible. childbirth at sea, a horror untold, miscarriages from malnutrition, or babes born to uncertain fates. Historical records hint at such, buried in admiralty logs, absurdity in governance, pirate councils debated like parliaments, Eliza eavesdropping. "Vote on the wench?" one barked. "She stays, brings luck." Luck? When a hurricane hit off Florida, masts snapping like twigs, men drowning in foam, luck felt mocking. Recovery, limping to port, repairs amid revelry. Eliza nursed wounds, her touch healing more than bodies. Sarcasm flowed, ye fought bravely, for what? More misery. Crew laughed, but eyes betrayed fear. Escalating dangers. Woodes Rogers, Bahamas governor, offered pardons in 1718, splintering pirates. Some took it, abandoning ships. Eliza tempted normal life, but addiction to freedom or chaos held her. Personal toll, loneliness amplified, no family, friends fleeting, dreams haunted by lost loves, what-ifs, pain's depth, surviving meant numbing, but numbness killed the soul. Cultural footnotes, sea shanties sung to rhythm work, Eliza joining choruses, yo-ho-ho masked despair. Folklore, mermaids as omens, women as curses, yet here she was, defying. Economic irony, pirates disrupted trade, yet relied on it. Smugglers in coves traded goods, Eliza haggling like a pro. Health hacks, vitamin C from limes, hence limeys, but scarce. Scurvy's agony, bleeding gums, reopened wounds. Eliza forced fruits on men, mothering murderers. Social satire, class inverted, former nobles turned pirates, bowing to captains once beneath them. Eliza, lowborn, rose through cunning, battle prep, drilling with swords, pistols. Eliza learned thrusts, her blade a last resort. A pivotal raid, off Africa, targeting slavers. Absurd liberation, freeing chains while wearing invisible ones. Post-raid feast, roasted meats, dances on deck. Eliza twirled, momentary joy piercing gloom, but dawn brought reality, hangovers, repairs, pursuit. Eliza's introspection, journaling in secret, words her anchor, foreshadowing, whispers of mutiny, eyes on her. As part 1 closes, the ship's bell tolls. More awaits, betrayals, storms, redemptions. Comment your predictions below. What fate for Eliza? Let's keep the engagement high. Alright mates, we're back on the high seas, plunging deeper into the forgotten lives of prostitutes on pirate ships. A saga so wild it makes Davy Jones's locker look like a cozy bed and breakfast. Last time, we met Eliza, our sharp-tongued survivor, clawing her way through the chaos of Black Bart Roberts' royal fortune. If you thought her first chapter was a whirlwind of absurdity and pain, buckle up. This part's about to toss you into a storm of betrayal, bloodshed, and the kind of dark humor that only comes from staring death in the face while holding a rusty cutlass. Ready to dive back into this historical nightmare? Let's hoist the sails and see how much worse it gets. The Caribbean sun beat down like a vengeful god, turning the deck of the Royal Fortune into a skillet, hot enough to fry a sailor's soul. It's 1719 now, and Eliza's been at sea for months, her skin weathered to leather, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. The crew's grown restless, too many raids, too little loot to go around. Pirates, for all their talk of freedom, were greedy buggers, and greed breeds trouble faster than rats in the hold. Eliza felt the tension, thick as the tar sealing the ship's seams. Every glance, every whisper carried the weight of a loaded pistol, and in this floating madhouse, she was both queen and pawn, her survival hinging on reading the room, or rather, the deck, better than any navigator charting the stars. Life aboard had settled into a grim routine, if you could call it that. Dawn broke with the bosun's whistle, a sound that could wake the dead and probably did given the ship's ghost stories. Eliza scrubbed planks alongside the swabs, her hands calloused, nails cracked, splinters a permanent accessory. The crew ate their meager rations, hardtack so hard it doubled as a weapon, and salt pork that smelled like regret. Scurvy was the silent assassin. Men's gums bled, teeth wobbled, and Eliza, ever the pragmatist, hoarded any citrus she could snag from raided ships. "Eat this, you scurvy dogs," she'd quip, tossing limes with a smirk, "or you'll be grinning like jack-o'-lanterns." They laughed, but only because they feared the alternative. Death's skeletal grin wasn't far off. But let's talk about the absurdity of it all, because piracy was nothing if not a theater of the ridiculous. Picture a crew of cutthroats, half drunk on stolen rum, staging mock trials for entertainment. They'd drag a poor sod, usually the newest recruit, before a court of leering pirates, accusing him of crimes like sneezing too loudly or stealing the captain's favorite hat. Eliza played along, appointed prosecutor one night, her sarcasm sharper than any blade. "Guilty of breathing our air," she'd declare, to roars of laughter while the accused begged for mercy. Mercy? On a pirate ship? That was as rare as a clean shirt. The punishment? A dunk in the sea or a night cleaning the bilges where the stench could peel paint. Yet, beneath the jests, pain festered. Eliza's role as the ship's comfort was a tightrope walk over shark-infested waters. The men paid for her time, sometimes in coins, sometimes in promises of protection, always with the unspoken threat of violence. Jealousy was a powder keg. One wrong look and fists flew. She'd learned to diffuse brawls with a quip or a distraction, but not always. One night, two deckhands, Jem, a wiry Londoner, and Diego, a Spanish runaway, came to blows over her. "She's mine tonight," Jem roared, only for Diego to draw a knife. Eliza stepped between them, heart pounding, and drawled, "Lads, I'm flattered, but my dance card's full, unless you're paying in gold." The crew laughed, tension broken, but her stomach churned. Survival meant playing the jester, but every jest cost a piece of her soul. The ship's hierarchy was its own absurd drama. Captain Roberts, with his teetotaling ways and fancy coats, ruled like a king, but the quartermaster, now a grizzled Welshman named Davies after McTavish's death, held the crew's loyalty. Pirates voted on everything: where to sail, who to raid, even whether to maroon a thief caught stealing from the common chest. Eliza had no vote, but her voice carried weight in whispers. She'd sidle up to Davies during watches, offering insights on ports or crew morale, her wit masking her fear. "Keep the men fed or they'll eat each other," she'd say, half joking, fully serious. Davies listened, but his eyes lingered too long, a reminder that power always came with strings. Raids were the heartbeat of piracy, and oh, what a bloody circus they were. The Royal Fortune stalked merchant ships like a wolf hunting deer, sails full, cannons primed. Eliza stayed below during battles, the deck above shuddering with cannon fire, screams, and the clash of steel. One raid off Barbados sticks in memory, a fat Dutch merchantman laden with sugar and slaves. The crew swarmed aboard, cutlasses flashing, while Eliza huddled in the hold, clutching a dagger she'd borrowed from a drunken gunner. Victory brought spoils, barrels of molasses, silver plate, and a dozen terrified captives. The pirates, in a rare bout of mercy, freed the enslaved men, offering them a choice: join or swim. Most joined, their eyes haunted, knowing freedom on a pirate ship was a cruel jest. Post-raid revelry was where absurdity hit its peak. The crew turned the deck into a tavern, rolling up barrels of captured wine, dancing to fiddles played by a one-eyed Frenchman who swore he'd been a nobleman. Eliza joined the fray, twirling in a stolen silk dress, her laughter masking the ache of McTavish's absence. "To the sea's true queens," a drunkard toasted, sloshing rum. She raised a glass, but her mind wandered to the captives below, their chains traded for the illusion of freedom. Irony stung. She, too, was bound, by necessity, by fear, by the ship that was both refuge and prison. But the pain of survival gnawed deeper. Disease was a constant specter. Syphilis, the sailor's curse, spread like wildfire, leaving men raving or crippled. Eliza, no stranger to the trade's risks, brewed poultices from herbs snatched in ports, useless against the worst, but better than nothing. The ship's surgeon, a carpenter with a hacksaw, was more butcher than healer. Amputations were common, rum the only anesthetic, screams echoing through the planks. Eliza assisted, holding men down, her hands slick with blood, her sarcasm a shield. "Hold still, or he'll saw off your ego next." The crew laughed, but her nights were haunted by their faces. Storms were another terror, nature's way of reminding pirates who really ruled the seas. One night, off the Carolinas, a squall hit like a hammer, waves towering over the masts. The ship groaned, timbers cracking, sails shredding. Eliza tied herself to a beam, praying to God she no longer believed in, while men slid across the deck, some washed overboard. The crew cursed her presence. Women bring storms. But Robert silenced them with a glare. Blame the wind, not the lass, he barked, though his eyes betrayed doubt. Survival's cost, every disaster pinned on her, every success claimed by men. Betrayal loomed as inevitable as the tide. The crew's unity, fragile as glass, cracked under greed. A new recruit, Silas, a weaselly ex-naval officer, whispered mutiny. He coveted Davy's role, spreading lies about stolen shares. Eliza overheard, her heart sinking. Mutinies were bloody, knives in the dark, bodies tossed to sharks. She faced a choice, snitch to Davies and risk Silas's wrath, or stay silent and pray the storm passed. She chose silence, but fate wasn't kind. Silas cornered her one night, his breath sour with grog. "You're with me, or you're fish food," he hissed. Eliza's response? A knee to his groin and a quip. "Fish have better manners." She fled, but the seed was sown. Trust was dead. The absurdity of pirate justice came next. Silas's mutiny fizzled when a loyalist ratted him out. The crew held a trial on deck, Roberts presiding like a deranged magistrate. Silas, bound and defiant, spat curses as Eliza watched, her heart pounding. The verdict? Marooning. They rowed him to a barren quay, leaving a pistol with one shot, a cruel mercy. As the ship sailed away, his screams faded into the wind. Eliza's sarcasm faltered. Freedom's a fine thing, until it's a bullet. The crew laughed, but she saw their fear. Who'd be next? Ports offered brief escape, but even there, danger lurked. In Nassau, now under Woodes Rogers' iron fist, pardons tempted the crew. Some slipped away, trading cutlasses for plows. Eliza considered it, dreaming of a quiet life, a cottage, a garden, no more blood. But who'd take a woman marked by the sea? Her reputation, stained by her trade, was a noose tighter than any rope. She stayed, her irony bitter. Freedom's just another port, and I'm out of coin. Love, or its ghost, haunted her. A new man, Tomas, a Portuguese gunner, stirred her heart. His quiet kindness, sharing his rations, teaching her to load a cannon, felt like a lifeline. But love on a pirate ship? A fool's bet. Tomas spoke of escaping together, a farm in Brazil, but Eliza knew better. "Dreams sink faster than ships," she told him, her smile masking pain. When he kissed her under a moonlit sky, she let herself hope, just for a moment. Pain's cruel jest. Hope was the sharpest blade. The seas grew hotter, navies closing in. British sloops patrolled, their cannons gleaming with imperial arrogance. Roberts planned a bold strike, a Spanish treasure fleet off Havana. The crew buzzed with greed, but Eliza sensed doom. "Gold or gallows," she muttered, her sarcasm a prayer. Preparations were frantic, sharpening blades, cleaning muskets, Eliza hauling powder kegs with the rest. The raid's eve brought a feast, the crew gorging on plundered hams, singing shanties of glory. Eliza sang too, her voice steady, her heart heavy. The raid was chaos. Cannons roared, smoke choked the air, blood slicked the decks. Eliza below heard the screams, her dagger ready. Victory came, but at a cost. Half the crew dead, Tomas among them, his body lost to the sea. Eliza's grief was silent, swallowed by duty. The spoils, gold, emeralds, silks, piled high, but her share felt hollow. "Riches," she scoffed. "To buy what? Another day of this?" The crew, drunk on triumph, didn't hear her pain. Back at sea, the ship limped, damaged from battle. Repairs meant time. Time meant exposure. A British frigate shadowed them, its silhouette a grim omen. Eliza's role shifted. She became lookout, her eyes scanning horizons for death. The crew's mood soured. Whispers of surrender grew. Roberts, defiant, vowed to fight. "No quarter!" he roared, but Eliza saw the cracks, fear in his eyes, doubt in his stance. Her own cracks deepened. Nights brought nightmares, McTavish's death, Tomas's face, the gallows waiting. She wrote in her secret journal, ink smudged by tears, "Freedom's a lie, but it's my lie." Survival's cost, her soul, piece by piece. The absurdity peaked in a bizarre ritual, a wedding for two crewmen, a drunken jest to mock land's laws. Eliza played bride, draped in looted lace, her laughter hollow. "Till death do us part," she toasted, which, here, is Tuesday. The crew roared, but the joke stung. Death was too close. Economic irony, the treasure so hard won vanished in ports. Merchants fleeced pirates, charging triple for rum, cloth, medicine. Eliza haggled, her wit a weapon. 10 shillings for a bandage? I'll bleed for free. Health remained a nightmare. Scurvy, dysentery, infections. Eliza's remedies, boiled roots, stolen laudanum, kept some alive, but not enough. Social dynamics twisted further. New recruits, fresh from pardons gone sour, brought tension. A freed slave, Kofi, joined, his strength earning respect, his silence hiding scars. Eliza bonded with him, sharing stories of chains, his literal, hers invisible. "Freedom's a horizon," he said, "always out of reach." She nodded, her sarcasm soft. "But we keep sailing." The climax loomed, a storm, a betrayal, or a battle that'd break them. Eliza felt it, her instincts sharp. The crew's greed, the Navy's pursuit, her own exhaustion. It was a powder keg. "One spark," she whispered, "and we're ash." As part 2 closes, the Royal Fortune sails into dusk, its future uncertain. Eliza stands at the bow, wind in her hair, pain in her heart. What's next? A mutiny, a storm, redemption or ruin? Drop a comment. What would you do in Eliza's shoes? Betray or stay loyal? Share below. Let's keep this adventure alive. Here we go again, mates, plunging back into the briny deep where the forgotten women of pirate ships fought tooth and nail to survive a world that chewed up dreams and spat out bones. We're tailing Eliza, our battle-scarred heroine, aboard the Royal Fortune, where the air's thick with salt, suspicion, and the stench of impending doom. Last time, we left her staring down a horizon as treacherous as a shark's grin, with betrayal brewing, navies closing in, and her heart battered by loss. Ready for part 3? This one's a whirlwind of storms, showdowns, and the kind of absurd twists that make you wonder how anyone survived the golden age of piracy. Let's dive into the chaos, grab your rum, and don't look back. The Caribbean in 1720 was a pressure cooker, and the Royal Fortune was its creakiest valve. Captain Bartholomew Roberts, with his teetotaling swagger and velvet coat, was pushing the crew harder than ever, chasing bigger hauls, dodging British frigates, and preaching glory while the men grumbled over dwindling shares. Eliza, now a fixture on the ship, was no longer just the lass in the shadows. She'd carved a niche, part confidant, part nurse, part jester, her sarcasm a lifeline in a world where hope was as scarce as fresh water. But don't mistake her for comfortable. Every day was a gamble, and the dice were loaded against her. The ship was a floating powder keg, and the fuse was lit by greed. The crew, a motley mix of English rogues, Dutch deserters, and freed slaves, bickered over spoils from the last raid. A Spanish galleon that cost too many lives, including Tomas, Eliza's fleeting spark of love. The gold and emeralds piled in the hold didn't soothe the sting. Men wanted more, always more. Eliza overheard the whispers during night watches. "Roberts keeps too much," muttered one. "Davies ain't splitting fair," hissed another. Mutiny's ghost haunted the decks, and Eliza, ever the survivor, kept her ears sharp and her dagger sharper. "Trouble's brewing," she quipped to Kofi, the quiet freedman who'd become her ally. "Aye," he nodded, "and we're the ones who'll drown." Life at sea was a relentless grind, and the absurdity of it could make you laugh or cry, usually both. Morning started with the boatswain's whistle, a screech that could curdle blood. Eliza scrubbed decks, hauled ropes, and patched sails, her hands raw, her dress a patchwork of looted fabrics. Food was a cruel joke. Weevil-ridden hardtack, fish stew that tasted like despair, and grog so foul it doubled as paint thinner. Scurvy stalked the crew, turning smiles into nightmares. Eliza, ever resourceful, bartered her services for extra rations, slipping limes to those she trusted. "Eat this, or your teeth'll jump ship before you do," she'd say, her grin masking the fear that she'd be next to fall. But the ridiculous theater of piracy never stopped. One night, the crew staged a mock coronation for Roberts, crowning him with a stolen tricorn and a scepter made of driftwood. Eliza played along, draping him in looted silk like a seamstress for a mad king. "All hail his majesty of misery," she proclaimed to raucous cheers. Roberts laughed, but his eyes were cold. Power was a jealous lover, and he knew the crew's loyalty was thinner than a worn sail. Eliza's wit kept her safe, but safety was a fleeting guest. Every laugh hit a blade, every jest a test. The pain of survival cut deeper than ever. Disease was a constant shadow. Syphilis and dysentery didn't discriminate, and the ship's surgeon, a carpenter with a penchant for saws, made things worse. Eliza tended the sick, her hands steady as she applied poultices of crushed herbs or stolen laudanum. "Hold on, lad," she'd murmur, cleaning a fevered brow. "Hell's waiting, but not today." Her sarcasm hid the toll. Each death chipped away at her, a reminder of her own fragility. Sleep brought no relief. Nightmares of Tomas' face, of McTavish's blood, of gallows swaying in port haunted her. She wrote in her secret journal, ink-stained fingers trembling, "I'm alive, but for what? To dance on a deck that's sinking?" Then came the storm, because the sea loves a good punchline. Off the leeward islands, the sky turned black, clouds roiling like a witch's brew. The Royal Fortune pitched in waves that dwarfed the masts, timbers groaning like a dying beast. Eliza tied herself to a rail, her body battered by icy spray, while men screamed prayers to gods long forgotten. "Women bring storms," a deckhand roared, pointing at her. Eliza shot back, "Blame your stink, it's scaring the heavens." The crew laughed, but fear clung like damp rot. The storm lasted 2 days, shredding sails, snapping a mast, and claiming 3 men to the deep. When it passed, the ship was a wreck, and so were spirits. Roberts rallied them with promises of riches, but Eliza saw the truth. They were limping prey, and the sharks, British and Spanish navies, were circling. Betrayal struck next, as predictable as sunrise. Davies, the quartermaster, had grown too cozy with a clique of new recruits, hoarding loot and whispering plans. Eliza caught wind, her instincts honed by months of eavesdropping. She faced a choice: warn Roberts and risk being labeled a snitch, or stay silent and pray the mutiny spared her. She chose to act, slipping to Roberts's cabin under moonlight. "Davies is plotting," she whispered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Roberts's face darkened, his teetotaler calm cracking. "Proof?" he demanded. "Men's tongues," she replied, and greed's louder than cannon. He nodded, but his gaze lingered. Trust was a coin rarely spent. The showdown came at dawn, a spectacle of pirate justice so absurd it could have been a play. Roberts called a council on deck, the crew forming a ragged circle, cutlasses glinting. Davies, caught off guard, blustered denials, but his allies faltered under Roberts' glare. Eliza stood back, her heart pounding as the crew voted, marooning for Davies, death for his ringleaders. They rowed Davies to a barren rock, leaving him with a flask and a pistol. One bullet, one choice. His curses echoed as the ship sailed away. Eliza's sarcasm failed her. She'd saved the ship, but at what cost? "Loyalty's a noose," she muttered to Kofi, who nodded grimly. "And we're all wearing it." Raids resumed, each bloodier than the last. A French merchantman off Martinique brought gold, but cost 10 men, their bodies dumped overboard like ballast. Eliza, now adept with a pistol, joined the boarding party, not by choice, but necessity. "Stay below and you're dead anyway," she reasoned, her dagger tucked in her belt. The clash was chaos, smoke, screams, the clash of steel. She fired once, her shot grazing a Frenchman's arm, her hands shaking as she reloaded. Survival's irony. She'd become the thing she despised, a killer if only to live. Post-raid, the crew feasted, but the mood was sour. The spoils, silks, spices, coins felt like fool's gold. Eliza draped herself in looted velvet, her quips sharp. Dressed like a lady, die like a dog. The crew laughed, but cracks widened. Some whispered of pardons, of quitting the life. Woods Rogers' amnesty in Nassau loomed like a siren's call, but Eliza knew better. Pardons came with chains, especially for a woman like her. Freedom's a port I'll never dock, she told Kofi, her voice bitter. He nodded, his own dreams buried in scars. Ports were fleeting havens, but danger followed. In Tortuga, the crew caroused, spending gold like water. Eliza haggled for medicines, her wit disarming merchants. 10 pounds for a salve. I'll heal with spit first. But spies lurked, British agents, bounty hunters, even turncoat pirates. A tavern brawl nearly exposed her. A drunken sailor called her Robert's whore, and she silenced him with a bottle to the head. "Call me Queen Love," she smirked, but her hands trembled. The noose tightened. Love, or its shadow, flickered again. A new crewman, Liam, an Irish runaway with a poet's tongue, stirred her battered heart. He shared stories of green hills, of a life beyond the sea. "Run with me," he urged one night, his hand warm on hers. Eliza wanted to believe, but pain taught caution. "Run where?" she asked, her sarcasm soft. "The sea's my cage, and you're just visiting." When he kissed her, she let herself feel, briefly, before pulling away. Love was a luxury, survival was not. The Navy's shadow grew. A British frigate, the Swallow, dogged their trail, its guns a death knell. Roberts planned a desperate gambit, a raid on a Portuguese convoy off Brazil, riches to fund a final stand. Preparations were grim, sharpening blades, packing powder, Eliza hauling cannonballs with the rest. The crew's mood was a mix of bravado and dread. "One last haul," Roberts promised, but Eliza saw the lie. His eyes betrayed exhaustion. She wrote in her journal, "We chase gold, but death's the prize." The raid was a bloodbath. The Portuguese fought like demons, their ships bristling with cannons. Eliza, now a reluctant fighter, fired from the deck, her shots lost in the chaos. Roberts fell, a musket ball through his throat, his body slumping over the helm. The crew faltered, but Kofi rallied them, his voice a roar. "Fight or hang!" They won, barely, the spoils heavy with blood. Eliza stared at Roberts's corpse, her sarcasm gone. He promised glory, got a grave. The aftermath was grim. The crew, leaderless, fractured. Kofi took command, his strength undeniable, but mutterings grew. Eliza, now a voice of reason, urged unity. "Split now, and we're chum." Some listened, others eyed the horizon, dreaming of pardons. The Swallow closed in, its sails a grim promise. Eliza's role shifted. She became strategist, plotting courses to evade capture. "Sail south," she urged. "Lose them in the islands." Kofi nodded, but doubt lingered. The absurdity peaked in a drunken wake for Roberts, the crew toasting his ghost with captured port. Eliza sang a shanty, her voice raw. "To the sea we gave our souls yo-ho." The crew joined, but tears mixed with rum. Pain's truth, they were free, but trapped. Economic irony, the haul, massive, was useless without ports to spend it. Merchants fleeced them, navies hunted them. Eliza bartered for repairs, her wit sharp. A new mast? I'd rather buy a kingdom. Health crumbled, malnutrition, infections, despair. Eliza's remedies ran dry. She nursed with words now, her stories keeping spirits afloat. Social shifts, Kofi's rise sparked tension. Some resented a freedman's rule, others saw strength. Eliza backed him, her loyalty a gamble. "Lead or die," she told him, her smile grim. He nodded, his scars a map of survival. The climax neared, a final stand or surrender. Eliza felt it, her bones aching with foreboding. The Swallow was close, its guns ready. She wrote, "Freedom's a lie, but I'll fight for it." As Part 3 closes, the Royal Fortune limps through fog, the crew divided, the Navy near. Eliza stands watch, her heart heavy, her dagger ready. What's next? A battle, a betrayal, or a miracle? Drop a comment. Would you fight or flee? Share your call below. Let's keep the saga sailing. Alright mates, we're at the final leg of this wild, salty ride through the forgotten lives of prostitutes on pirate ships. A tale so drenched in absurdity, pain, and defiance it could sink a galleon. Eliza, our sharp-witted survivor, stands on the battered deck of the Royal Fortune, the Caribbean a cauldron of storms and betrayal. Captain Roberts is dead, the crew's fracturing, and the British frigate Swallow is closing in like a noose. This is Part 4, where the seas boil, choices cut deeper than cutlasses, and the line between freedom and doom blurs into a sarcastic smirk. Ready for the endgame? Let's plunge into the abyss one last time and see if Eliza's story sinks or swims. The year's still 1720, but time feels meaningless when every dawn could be your last. The Royal Fortune is a ghost ship now, its sails tattered, hull leaking, and crew a patchwork of desperation. Kofi, the freedman turned reluctant captain, holds the helm with a grip as tight as his resolve, but the men are unraveling. Greed, fear, and rum fuel whispers of surrender. Some dream of pardons in Nassau, others of one last score to cheat the gallows. Eliza, ever the Shadow Queen, navigates this chaos with her usual mix of cunning and quips, but her heart's heavy. She's lost McTavish, Tomas, and now Roberts, each death a scar, each scar a reminder. Survival's a cruel jest, and the punchline's coming. Daily life is a grind sharper than a barnacle's edge. The bosun's whistle, once a call to order, now sounds like a funeral bell. Eliza hauls ropes, patches leaks, and dodges leers from men too broken to care about superstition anymore. Food's a memory, hardtack's gone, replaced by fish bones and seaweed stew that tastes like regret. Scurvy's grip tightens, men's teeth fall like dice, and Eliza's citrus stash is long gone. "Smile, lads," she quips, her voice hoarse. "The sharks will love your gums." They laugh, but it's hollow. Death's too close for comfort. Water's worse, stagnant and green, sipped through gritted teeth. Eliza trades favors for sips, her dignity a currency she spends sparingly. The absurdity of piracy reaches its zenith here, a circus of madness on a sinking stage. The crew, half starved and half mad, stages a feast one night, roasting a shark caught in a net. They crown Kofi, king of the deep, draping him in looted lace, while Eliza plays high priestess, toasting with a cup of brackish water. "To our empire of driftwood," she declares, her sarcasm biting. The men roar, but their eyes betray them. Fear, not mirth, rules this court. Kofi meets her gaze, his nod a silent pact. They'll fight or die trying. But fighting what? The sea, the navy, or themselves? Pain's the real captain now. Disease ravages the crew. Syphilis twists bodies, dysentery drains souls. Eliza, no doctor but the closest they've got, tends the sick with rags and prayers. The carpenter surgeon's dead, lost in the last raid, so she's left to stitch wounds with fishing twine, her hands steady, her heart not. "Stay alive, you fool," she mutters to a fevered gunner. "I'm not burying you yet." Nightmares haunt her, faces of the dead, gallows creaking in port, her own reflection in the sea, accusing. Her journal, hidden in a loose plank, holds her truth. I'm free, but chained. Alive, but drowning. The Swallow's pursuit is relentless, its sails a grim promise on the horizon. Kofi plots evasion, weaving through cays and shoals, but the ship's too battered, the crew too weak. Eliza becomes navigator, her eyes scanning charts stolen from a French sloop. "Southwest," she urges, "hide in the mangroves." Kofi trusts her, but the crew doesn't. Some mutter she's cursed, others that she's Kofi's spy. Her sarcasm snaps. Curse? I'm the only one keeping this tub afloat. But doubt festers, and betrayal's scent is stronger than the bilge. The final raid comes because pirates never learn. A Spanish merchantman, limping off Cuba, promises gold enough to buy freedom, or at least a few more weeks. Kofi rallies the crew, his voice a thunderclap. "One last fight for our souls." Eliza, now a fighter by necessity, straps a pistol to her hip, her dagger gleaming. The battle is hell, cannons roar, grapnels fly, blood paints the deck. Eliza fires into the smoke, her shots wild but her resolve iron. The Spanish fall, their cargo hers for the taking, silver, wine, medicines. But victory's cost is steep. Half the crew's gone, Kofi wounded, a musket ball in his shoulder. Eliza drags him below, stitching him up as he grits his teeth. "You're no surgeon," he gasps. "And you're no captain," she retorts, "but we're stuck with each other." The spoils are a bitter prize. Silver glints, but the ship's dying. Leaks sprouting faster than lies. The crew, drunk on looted wine, divides shares with trembling hands. Eliza's cut is small, half a share, as always, but she takes it, her sarcasm sharp. Rich enough to die pretty. The men laugh, but the swallow's closer, its guns a distant rumble. Kofi, pale but standing, calls a council. "Fight or surrender?" he asks. The crew splits, half want to run, half want blood. Eliza, her voice low, says, "Fight and we die free, surrender and we hang." Kofi nods, but the vote's tied. Chaos looms, betrayal strikes as it must. A deckhand, Ezra, a weasel-faced deserter, slips to the hold, signaling the swallow with a stolen lantern. Eliza catches him, her dagger at his throat. "Why?" she hisses. "Pardon's better than death," he sneers. Her choice is instant. She slits his throat, his blood pooling like ink. No quip, no sarcasm, just survival. But the damage is done. The swallow's upon them, its cannons gleaming. Kofi rallies the crew for a last stand, his wound bleeding through bandages. "No quarter," he roars, echoing Robert's. Eliza loads pistols, her hands steady, her heart racing. The battle is a nightmare. The swallow's broadsides tear the Royal Fortune apart, masts splintering, men screaming as they're blown to bits. Eliza fights on deck, firing until her powder's gone, then swinging her dagger like a demon. Kofi falls, a cannonball taking his leg, his eyes meeting hers as he bleeds out. "Lev," he whispers. She nods, tears mixing with gunpowder. The ship burns, its hull a pyre. Eliza dives overboard, the sea swallowing her as the Fortune sinks. She washes ashore on a Cuban beach, half dead, her body battered but her spirit unbroken. The silver she'd tucked in her belt buys passage to a smuggler's den, where she vanishes into the shadows. History forgets her, as it does all her kind. No ballads for the women who survived by wit and will. But her journal, buried under a palm, holds her truth. I was free, for a moment. It was enough. The absurdity lingers. Pirates, those rebels of the sea, were slaves to greed, their freedom a gilded cage. Eliza's life was a paradox. Prostitute, pirate, survivor, ghost. The pain of her existence, loss, disease, betrayal, wove a tapestry of resilience, her sarcasm the thread that held it together. The seas, cruel and endless, taught her one truth. Survival's the only treasure that matters. Economic irony. The gold they chased fueled empires that hunted them. Ports bled them dry, merchants laughing as pirates paid triple for bread. Eliza's last coins bought her escape, but freedom? That was a myth, as fleeting as a fair wind. Health's horror, no medicine could cure the soul. Eliza's poultices saved some, but the sea claimed more. Her own scars, physical, emotional, were her map, each one a story of survival. Social satire. The crew, a microcosm of the world, aped nobility while living like rats. Eliza, low-born, outwitted them all, her wit a crown no one could steal. The final twist. Rumors in Tortuga spoke of a woman pirate, half legend, half lie. Was it Eliza, or another forgotten soul? History doesn't care, it buries the voiceless. As part 4 closes, the sea rolls on, indifferent. Eliza's fate, alive, dead, or reborn, lives in whispers. Drop a comment. What do you think became of Eliza? Would you have jumped ship or fought to the end? Share below. Let's keep the fire burning. Imagine this. You're chilling in your comfy modern home, scrolling through memes about epic fails, when suddenly, bam, a giant wooden horse shows up at your doorstep. It's labeled free gift from your enemies. Do you wheel it inside for a party? Or do you, I don't know, maybe set it on fire? If you're the ancient Trojans, you picked door number 1, and congratulations, you've just signed up for the most disastrous unboxing video in history. Welcome to the Trojan Horse saga, where one questionable gift turns a decade-long war into a punchline that still slaps 3,000 years later. Buckle up, because we're diving into this absurd nightmare with all the irony, sarcasm, and historical facepalms it deserves. And hey, if you've ever trusted a shady delivery, drop a comment below. What's the worst gift you've ever received? Let's see if it beats a belly full of Greek warriors. The Trojan War. The granddaddy of all epic beefs, where gods meddle like bored reality TV producers, heroes strut around in skimpy armor, and everyone suffers because some prince couldn't keep it in his tunic. But let's rewind to the beginning, shall we? Picture ancient Greece, or rather the scattered city-states that make up what we romantically call Greece. It's around 1200 BCE, give or take a few centuries, because ancient historians weren't exactly sticklers for calendars. Life back then? Brutal. No Netflix, no antibiotics, just constant raids, famines, and the occasional plague thrown in for flavor. Survival meant dodging spears, appeasing fickle gods, and hoping your crops didn't fail because Zeus had a bad hair day. Enter Paris, the pretty boy prince of Troy. Troy, for the uninitiated, was this fortified city in what's now Turkey, sitting pretty on trade routes, raking in gold from merchants who'd rather pay tolls than get shank-bed by pirates. Paris? He's got it all: looks, lineage, and zero common sense. Legend has it he's judging a beauty contest between 3 goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, because nothing says wise decision like pitting immortal divas against each other. Aphrodite bribes him with the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, who just happens to be married to Menelaus, king of Sparta. Paris, being the hormonal idiot he is, kidnaps her, or elopes, depending on whose bard you're listening to, and sails back to Troy like he's won the lottery. Cue the outrage. Menelaus, red-faced and humiliated, calls up his brother Agamemnon, the big boss of Mycenae, who's basically the Tony Soprano of ancient Greece. Agamemnon sees this as his chance to flex, unite the Greeks, sack Troy, and grab all that sweet, sweet loot. For honor, they cry, but really it's for gold, slaves, and bragging rights. The Greeks assemble a massive fleet, over 1,000 ships if you believe Homer, who probably exaggerated like a fisherman talking about the one that got away. These aren't luxury liners. They're rickety wooden boats crewed by half-starved warriors, who'd rather be farming than puking over the side during storms. The voyage to Troy? A nightmare. Winds fail because Agamemnon pissed off Artemis by boasting or sacrificing the wrong deer. Stories vary. He ends up sacrificing his own daughter, Iphigenia, to get the winds blowing. Yeah, that's the pain of survival. Dads offing kids for a breeze. The fleet finally arrives, beaches on Trojan shores, and the war kicks off. 10 years of slog. Sieges back then weren't quick. No gunpowder, no drones, just walls, arrows, and catapults lobbing rocks. Trojans hunker down behind their massive fortifications, built by Poseidon and Apollo themselves, because gods do construction gigs on the side. The Greeks? They're camping on the beach like it's the world's worst music festival. Dysentery from bad water, rats in the tents, and constant skirmishes where you might get an arrow in the butt just for fetching firewood. Heroes like Achilles sulk in their tents over bruised egos. Achilles because Agamemnon stole his war prize, a girl named Briseis. Oh, boo-hoo, my slave girl. Meanwhile, the rank and file grunts are dying in droves, dreaming of home while Hector, Troy's golden boy, carves through them like a hot knife through butter. Let's talk Hector for a sec. The anti-Paris, dutiful, brave, family man. He's got a wife, Andromache, and a baby son, Astyanax. In one heart-wrenching scene from the Iliad, Hector says goodbye to them, knowing he might not come back. Andromache begs him to stay inside the walls, but nope, duty calls. He lifts his helmet, scary with its horsehair plume, and the baby freaks out, crying. Hector laughs, prays for his son's future, then heads out to slaughter Greeks. Ironic, right? The guy's a walking tragedy, fighting for a city doomed by his brother's libido. Battles rage, gods interfere. Athena tricks Hector into thinking she's his ally, then bails. Apollo knocks Patroclus, Achilles' best bud, or lover, depending on the fanfic, into the dirt, letting Hector finish him off. Achilles goes berserk, drags Hector's body around Troy behind his chariot. Desecration? Check. Psychological warfare? Double check. Priam, Troy's king, sneaks into the Greek camp to beg for his son's corpse. Achilles, in a rare moment of humanity, relents. But the war drags on, absurd stalemate. Greeks can't breach the walls, Trojans can't drive them off. Enter the Trojan horse, stage left. But wait, we're not there yet. First, the buildup of absurdity. Odysseus, the sly fox from Ithaca, is the brains of the operation. While others bash heads, he's plotting. Remember the pain? Warriors with infected wounds, no penicillin, just herbs and prayers. One guy, Philoctetes, gets bitten by a snake. His foot rots, stinks up the camp. They abandon him on an island. Later, they need his magic bow, Heracles' gift, so they fetch him back. He's pissed, understandably. Shoots Paris with a poisoned arrow. Paris dies writhing, begging for mercy from his ex, Oenon, who refuses. Karmic justice served cold. Troy's allies trickle in. Amazons led by Penthesilea, who Achilles kills then falls in love with her corpse. Creepy much? Memnon from Ethiopia, another hero slain. The gods pick sides like it's a fantasy league. Zeus tries to stay neutral but fails. Poseidon hates Troy for stiffing him on wall-building pay. Aphrodite backs Paris because bribery. Now, the horse idea. After 10 years, the Greeks are exhausted. Morale's in the toilet. Agamemnon's dreaming of his palace. Spoiler, his wife Clytemnestra's plotting his murder with a bath and an axe. Odysseus hatches the plan. Fake a retreat, leave a giant wooden horse as a gift to Poseidon for safe seas home. Inscribe it. For the return home, the Greeks dedicate this offering to Athena. Trojans, seeing the empty beach, think they've won. Party time. But let's savor the irony. The Trojans debate, burn it, smash it. Priest Laocoon warns, fear the Greeks, even bearing gifts. He hurls a spear at it, thud, hollow sound. Suspicious? Nah. Then snakes slither from the sea, courtesy of Athena, and strangle Laocoon and his sons. Trojans freak. It's a sign. The horse is sacred. They wheel it inside, ignoring Cassandra, Priam's daughter, cursed by Apollo to prophesy truth but never be believed. She's screaming, "It's a trap!" Everyone laughs her off. Historical absurdity at its finest, ignoring the smart ones because gods rigged the game. Inside the horse, 30 elite Greeks crammed like sardines, sweating in the dark, praying no one sneezes. Odysseus, Epeius, the builder, Menelaus, and pals. The bellies packed tight, claustrophobia city. They wait as Trojans celebrate, getting drunk, passing out, night falls. Sinon, a Greek left behind as deserter, spins a yarn. The Greeks hated me, left the horse to appease Athena after desecrating her temple. Trojans buy it hook, line, and sinker. Gates open, horse rolls in. Revelry ensues. Trojans dance around it, kids climb on it, oblivious to the doom inside. As the city sleeps, the Greeks sneak out, signal the fleet hiding nearby. Gates flung wide, massacre begins, but that's jumping ahead. Let's linger on the build-up. The war's toll. Countless dead, widows weaving shrouds, orphans scavenging. Economic ruin, trade halted, fields burned. Psychological scars, PTSD before it had a name. Heroes like Ajax go mad, slaughter sheep thinking they're enemies, then suicide. Odysseus is cunning, born of desperation. He's homesick for Penelope and Telemachus, but duty chains him. The horse plan? Risky as hell. What if Trojans torch it, or inspect inside? Epeius builds it huge, maybe 30 feet tall, wheels for mobility, wood from nearby forests, scarce after years of siege. Trojans' fatal flaw, hubris. After a decade, victory feels so sweet they ignore red flags. Priam, aged and weary, wants peace for his people. Helen, the cause of it all, watches from the walls, regretting her choices? Maybe. Homer paints her complex, beautiful but trapped. As the horse enters, imagine the creak of wheels on cobblestones, cheers echoing. Inside, warriors stifle breaths, muscles cramping, hours tick by. Finally, midnight. Helen, clever girl, circles the horse, mimicking wives' voices to lure them out. Odysseus clamps hands over mouths. Close call. They emerge, silent shadows in the moonlight. Slaughter the guards, open gates. Greek army pours in. Troy burns. The sack. Horror show. Men killed, women enslaved, kids dashed against walls. Priam slain at his altar by Achilles' son Neoptolemus. Hector's baby Astyanax hurled from the walls, lest he grow to avenge. Andromache captured. Cassandra raped by Ajax the Lesser in Athena's temple, earning divine wrath. Helen? Menelaus finds her, sword raised, but her beauty disarms him. They sail home together awkwardly. Odysseus? His odyssey begins. 10 more years wandering. Cyclops, sirens, because Poseidon hates him for blinding Polyphemus. The Trojan horse, symbol of deception, but really a monument to human stupidity. Why trust a gift from foes who've besieged you for a decade? Absurd, painful, ironic, and that's just the setup. The war's roots run deeper. Judgment of Paris ties back to Eris's golden apple of discord, tossed at a wedding because she wasn't invited. God's pettiness dooms mortals. Survival in antiquity? A joke. One wrong move, boom, enslaved or dead. No rights, no therapy, just endless cycles of vengeance. What do you think? Would you have fallen for the horse? Comment below with your take. Was Paris the ultimate simp, or Agamemnon the greed king? Let's debate. But wait, the story's far from over. The aftermath ripples through history, inspiring epics, art, warnings. Virgil's Aeneid spins it from Trojan side. Aeneas flees, founds Rome. So Troy's fall births an empire. Ironic twist, deeper absurdities. Homer's Iliad doesn't even cover the horse. That's later tales, like Quintus Smyrnaeus or Virgil. Homer stops at Hector's funeral. The horse? Myth layered on myth. Archaeology? Heinrich Schliemann digs up his Arlik, claims it's Troy. Layers of ruins, burned cities. Was there a real war? Probably, over trade, not Helen, but the horse? Likely metaphor for siege engine or trickery. Pain of survival. Imagine being a Trojan farmer, conscripted, watching your home burn because elites quarreled, or Greek soldier, far from home, dying for kings' egos. Sarcastic lens, gods as dysfunctional family, Zeus cheating, Hera jealous, Apollo petty, mortals their playthings. Engage. If you were Odysseus, what wild plan would you hatch? Comment your ideas. Part 1 wraps here, but the nightmare continues. Stay tuned for Part 2, where we dissect the horse's construction, the night of terror, and more historical hilarity. Hit like if you're hooked. Subscribe for more ironic dives into history's dumpster fires. Alright, you thought the Trojan horse setup was a wild ride? Buckle up, because we're diving into Part 2 of this ancient Greek tragedy turned farce, where the absurdity cranks up, the body count skyrockets, and the irony stings like a spear to the face. Picture this. A massive wooden horse, stuffed with sweaty Greek warriors, sitting smugly inside Troy's walls, while the Trojans party like they've just won the ancient lottery. Spoiler alert, they haven't. This is the moment where history's most questionable gift goes from cool statue bro to congratulations, you've just invited your doom to dinner. We're about to unpack the horse's construction, the night of terror, and the sheer chaos of human stupidity that made it all possible. Oh, and if you've ever fallen for a too good to be true deal, drop a comment below. What's your personal Trojan horse moment? Let's see who's been burned worse than Troy. Let's set the scene. It's roughly 1200 BCE, and the Trojan War has dragged on for a decade. The Greeks are camped on the beach, living in a filth-ridden shantytown of tents, eating moldy bread and dodging arrows while their leaders bicker like kids over the last slice of baklava. The Trojans, meanwhile, are holed up behind their impenetrable walls, built by gods but maintained by sheer stubbornness. Both sides are exhausted, half dead, and questioning their life choices. The Greeks can't break in, the Trojans can't kick them out, and everyone's just waiting for something, anything, to tip the scales. Enter Odysseus, the slick-talking, idea-sparking trickster from Ithaca, who's probably the only guy still using his brain instead of his biceps. Odysseus' lightbulb moment, the Trojan horse. But let's not rush to the big reveal. First, the absurd logistics of pulling this off. Building a giant wooden horse isn't like slapping together a flat-pack shelf from some ancient IKEA. Resources are scarce after 10 years of siege. The Greeks have chopped down every tree within a 50-mile radius for firewood, spears, and ships. Where do you even get the wood for a 30-foot-tall equine death trap? Pr0stitutes, the resident carpenter/genius, probably had to scavenge from wrecked ships and abandoned siege towers, cobbling together planks while muttering, "This better work, or I'm dead." The horse has to be big, impossibly big, to impress the Trojans and fit a squad of elite warriors. Think less cute pony and more terrifying wooden kaiju on wheels. The construction process? A nightmare of ancient engineering. No power tools, no cranes, just sweaty grunts hauling timber with ropes and brute force. Pr0stitutes, bless his calloused hands, designs it hollow, with a trap door in the belly, because nothing says surprise like a dozen armed dudes spilling out like candy from a piñata. The horse's exterior? Polished to look divine, maybe even painted or draped with garlands to scream sacred offering. Inscribe it with some pious nonsense, "To Athena for our safe return home." The Greeks know the Trojans are suckers for religious optics. It's like leaving a gift-wrapped bomb labeled "From your bestie." Now, the warriors inside. Odysseus handpicks the A-team. Menelaus itching to reclaim Helen. Neoptolemus, Achilles' teenage son with a chip on his shoulder. Maybe Diomedes, who stabbed more Trojans than anyone. And a bunch of other sweaty, bearded badasses. 30 guys, maybe more, crammed into a wooden box with no ventilation, no bathroom breaks, and no room to stretch. Imagine the smell. Unwashed armpits, leather armor, and fierce sweat stewing for hours. Claustrophobia? Check. Risk of someone sneezing and blowing the whole plan? Double check. They're sitting there, gripping swords, whispering prayers to Athena, while Odysseus hisses, "Shut up or we're all skewered." The Greeks' plan hinges on deception, and that's where Sinon comes in. This guy's the unsung hero, or villain, depending on your team. He's the deserter left behind to sell the lie. Picture him, scrawny, disheveled, probably coached by Odysseus to look extra pathetic. The Greeks fake their retreat, dismantling their camp, sailing their ships just out of sight to a nearby island, Tenedos. The Trojans wake up, see the empty beach, and lose their minds with joy. We won. Time to get wasted, they pour out, poking through the Greeks' abandoned trash, broken spears, half-eaten rations, maybe a sandal or two. Then they spot it, the horse looming like a bizarre Airbnb listing. Here's where the Trojans' survival instincts take a vacation. Laocoon, the priest with 2 brain cells to rub together, smells a rat. "This is a trap, you idiots," he yells, hurling a spear at the horse. It hits with a hollow thud. Hello, giant empty cavity full of Greeks. Does anyone listen? Nope. Athena, Team Greece's biggest fangirl, sends sea snakes to strangle Laocoon and his sons in front of everyone. The Trojans, instead of thinking, maybe he's onto something, go, "Yikes, the gods hate him. The horse must be sacred." Face palm level Olympic. Cassandra, the prophetess no one believes, is also screaming, "Burn it! It's death!" They pat her on the head and tell her to chill. Hubris, meet humanity. The Trojans decide to drag this monstrosity inside. The city gates are too narrow, so they tear down part of their sacred walls. Walls built by gods, mind you, to make room. If that's not a metaphor for self-destruction, I don't know what is. The horse creaks along, wheels groaning as kids climb it, women toss flowers, and men chant victory songs. Inside, the Greeks are sweating bullets, praying the wheels don't snap or someone doesn't get curious with a torch. Helen, ever the wild card, circles the horse that night, mimicking the voices of the warriors' wives, Penelope, Clytemnestra, random camp girlfriends. She's either testing for Greeks or just stirring the pot because she's Helen. Odysseus clamps hands over mouths, keeping his boys silent. Close call number 1. Night falls. The Trojans are drunk, passed out, or both. The city's a tinderbox of wooden houses ripe for chaos. Sinon sneaks to the horse, signals the hidden Greeks. The trapdoor opens, out they slither, silent as death. They kill the sleeping guards, quick, brutal stabs. The gates swing open. The Greek fleet, which never really left, sails back under moonlight. Thousands of warriors pour into Troy like ants on a picnic. The sack begins. Imagine the horror. Trojans wake to screams, smoke, blood. Houses burn, swords flash, no mercy. Priam, the old king, clings to an altar, praying for divine intervention. Spoiler, the gods are busy. Neoptolemus, Achilles' kid, guts him like a fish. Hector's baby son, Astyanax, is torn from Andromache's arms and hurled from the walls because the Greeks don't want a future avenger. Andromache herself, dragged off as a slave. Cassandra, clinging to Athena's statue, is assaulted by Ajax the Lesser, who's too dumb to fear divine payback. The gods later sink his ship for that one. Karma's slow, but it hits. Helen? Menelaus finds her, sword raised, ready to end the woman who sparked this mess. But she's Helen, beauty personified. One look, and he's disarmed. They limp back to Sparta, where their marriage is probably the most awkward sitcom never filmed. The rest of Troy? Enslaved, slaughtered, or scattered. Aeneas, one of the few survivors, grabs his dad and kid, flees the flames, and sets sail for Italy, laying the seeds for Rome. Irony alert, Troy's fall births an empire that'll one day dwarf Greece. Let's zoom out. The pain of survival here is raw. Imagine being a Trojan civilian. You've endured a decade of rationing, fear, losing sons to war. Now your city's burning, your family's dead or enslaved, and you're dodging Greek spears in your pajamas. Or a Greek soldier. You've survived 10 years of dysentery, wounds, and homesickness, only to commit atrocities that'll haunt you. PTSD? No word for it, just nightmares and wine. The absurdity? The gods. Athena, Poseidon, Apollo. They're less divine protectors, more reality TV hosts egging on the carnage. Zeus watches like he's binging a soap opera, occasionally tossing lightning bolts for drama. Mortals are pawns in their petty bets. And the horse itself? A masterclass in psychological warfare. The Greeks didn't just build a weapon, they built a meme. A giant, ridiculous symbol of trust betrayed. Archaeologically, Troy's real enough. Hisarlik's ruins show burn marks, arrowheads, signs of siege. But the horse? Probably a mythologized siege engine or a metaphor for betrayal. Homer's Iliad skips it, ending with Hector's funeral. Later poets like Virgil and Quintus Smyrnaeus fill in the blanks, spinning a tale so wild it stuck with us for millennia. Sarcasm time. The Trojans really rolled a 30-foot gift from their enemies into their city and thought, yeah, this is fine. And the Greeks spent 10 years and thousands of lives just to prove they could pull off the ultimate prank. Worth it? You tell me. Engage, folks. If you were a Trojan, would you have burned the horse or thrown a parade? Comment your call. And if you were stuck inside that horse, how long before you'd crack from the claustrophobia? Let's hear it. Part 2's done, but the fallout's just beginning. Part 3 dives into the aftermath, the survivor's trauma, the gods' final middle finger, and how this disaster shaped history's view of trust. Like, subscribe, and brace for more historical insanity. So you thought the Trojan horse rolling into town was the peak of this disaster flick? Oh honey, welcome to part 3, where the ashes of Troy are still smoldering, the survivors are picking up the pieces of their shattered lives, and the gods are cackling like they just pulled off the ultimate prank. This is the aftermath of history's most questionable gift, where the pain of survival hits harder than a Greek spear. The irony is thicker than Trojan walls, and the absurdity of it all makes you wonder if humanity ever learns. Picture Troy. A city reduced to a charred skeleton, bodies in the streets, and the few left alive wishing they weren't. The Greeks sail off with loot and slaves, but their victory tastes like ash. Got a story about a time you thought you won, only to realize you lost everything? Drop it in the comments. Let's see if it rivals Troy's epic faceplant. The sack of Troy is over, but the scars are fresh. The city, once a glittering hub of trade with walls that mocked invaders, is now a smoking ruin. Wooden beams crackle in the flames, temples are looted, and the stench of death hangs heavy. The Trojans who survived the night, mostly women and kids, are rounded up like cattle. Andromache, Hector's widow, is chained and handed to Neoptolemus, the kid who killed her father-in-law. Her baby Astyanax is gone, thrown from the walls to prevent a future hero from rising. Imagine her pain. A decade of war, her husband's body desecrated, her son murdered, and now she's a slave, destined for a Greek lord's bed. Survival? It's a curse wrapped in despair. Cassandra, Priam's prophetess daughter, fares no better. She's dragged from Athena's temple, where she clung for sanctuary and assaulted by Ajax the Lesser. The gods, who love a good scandal, don't let that slide. Athena and Poseidon team up to wreck his ship later. But for Cassandra, it's too late. She's carted off to Agamemnon's palace in Mycenae, where his wife, Clytemnestra, is sharpening an axe for her own revenge plot. Spoiler: Cassandra's visions of her own death come true because Apollo's curse ensures no one believes her. Irony level? Shakespearean. Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships, gets a bizarrely soft landing. Menelaus storms through the burning city, sword in hand, ready to gut her for sparking this whole mess. But one look at her, those legendary eyes, that mythic beauty, and his resolve melts like wax. He takes her back to Sparta, where they'll spend years in the world's most awkward marriage. Did she manipulate him, or is he just that weak? Either way, the woman blamed for the war walks away, while Troy's innocents pay the price. History's got a twisted sense of humor. Aeneas, the Trojan prince, is the rare survivor with a future. While the city burns, he grabs his father Anchises and his son Ascanius and bolts. Picture it: flames licking the sky, screams echoing, and Aeneas hauling his dad on his back like a human backpack, clutching a kid's hand, dodging falling beams. He carries Troy's sacred relics, little statues of the gods, because even in chaos, you've got to respect the divine HR department. His wife Creusa vanishes in the mayhem, a ghost urging him to flee. Aeneas sails off, destined to wander before founding Rome. Yeah, Rome, the empire that'll one day make Greece look like a minor league team. Troy's ashes seed a new superpower. Talk about a plot twist. The Greeks? They're not exactly popping champagne. Victory comes with a body count, and the gods aren't done meddling. Agamemnon sails home to Mycenae, thinking he's the big winner, only to get murdered in his bathtub by Clytemnestra, who's been stewing over that whole sacrificing our daughter thing. Her lover, Aegisthus, helps with the stabbing. Agamemnon, the war's mastermind, dies in a soap opera bloodbath. His son, Orestes, will later avenge him, because Greek tragedies love a good revenge cycle. Odysseus, our horse-building genius, doesn't get a hero's welcome either. Poseidon, still salty about Odysseus blinding his Cyclops son Polyphemus, curses him to 10 years of wandering. Cyclops, sirens, lotus eaters, a witch goddess who turns his crew into pigs. Odysseus's Odyssey is a masterclass in be careful what you wish for. He just wants to get home to Penelope and Telemachus, but the gods keep throwing curveballs. Survival means outsmarting monsters, resisting temptation, and watching his men die one by one. By the time he reaches Ithaca, he's a broken man, disguised as a beggar, fighting to reclaim his own house. Heroism? More like endurance with a side of trauma. The rank-and-file Greeks? Most don't make it home. Storms scatter the fleet, thanks Athena and Poseidon for punishing that temple desecration. Ships sink, men drown, and those who survive limp back to broken homes. The war's cost is staggering. Thousands dead, economies tanked, families shattered. The Mycenaean Greeks, the big shots of the Bronze Age, never recover. Their palaces crumble, their writing system, Linear B, vanishes, and Greece slides into a dark age for centuries. Troy's fall doesn't just end a city, it kicks off a civilizational hangover. Let's talk pain. Survival in this era is a cruel joke. No hospitals, no therapists, just raw grief and makeshift bandages. Trojan women, now slaves, face a lifetime of servitude or worse. Greek soldiers carry scars, physical and mental, from a decade of slaughter. Imagine the nightmares: blood-soaked sand, friends' corpses, the screams of Trojan kids. No one's writing self-help books in 1200 BCE. You drown your pain in wine or throw yourself on a sword, like Ajax the Greater, who goes mad and kills himself after losing Achilles' armor to Odysseus. Mental health? Not a thing. You just keep swinging until you drop. The absurdity? The gods are the ultimate trolls. Zeus watches the carnage like it's his favorite reality show, occasionally picking sides to spice things up. Athena and Hera, still bitter about Paris's beauty contest snub, cheer as Troy burns. Apollo, who backed the Trojans, shrugs and moves on. Poseidon, stiffed on his wall-building paycheck, makes sure the Greeks suffer on their way home. These immortals aren't wise. They're petty, jealous, and bored, using mortals as chess pieces. The Trojan horse? Less a divine plan, more a cosmic bet. Bet you I can make them fall for this. The horse itself becomes a legend, a symbol of deception so iconic it's still a metaphor today. Was it real? Probably not in the literal sense. Archaeologists digging at Hisarlik, modern Troy, find layers of destruction, bronze weapons, signs of siege. But a giant wooden horse? Likely a poetic stand-in for a battering ram, a clever ruse, or even an earthquake, Poseidon's other gig. Homer's Iliad doesn't mention it, ending with Hector's funeral. The horse story comes from later epics, Virgil's Aeneid, Quintus Smyrnaeus' Post-Homerica, spinning a tale so juicy it stuck. Fact or fiction, it's the ultimate gotcha moment. The ripple effects, huge. Aeneas' journey plants the seeds for Rome, which will one day conquer Greece and spread the story across the Mediterranean. The Trojan War becomes the blueprint for Western literature, epics, tragedies, even modern movies about betrayal and revenge. It's a cautionary tale. Don't trust shiny gifts from enemies. Don't let hubris blind you. And maybe, just maybe, listen to the crazy prophetess screaming about doom. But let's get real. The Trojans' biggest mistake wasn't the horse. It was their arrogance. A decade of war, and they thought the Greeks would just pack up and leave a peace offering? Come on, and the Greeks? They burned a fortune in men and resources for what? A city's worth of loot, a few slaves, and a story to tell. Pyrrhic victory doesn't even cover it. The sarcasm drips here. Imagine the Trojan council meeting. Hey, let's tear down our sacred walls for this random horse statue. What could go wrong? Or the Greeks patting themselves on the back for a decade of bloodshed, only to sail into storms and domestic murder plots. History's laughing at both sides, and we're still chuckling 3,000 years later. Engage time. If you were a Trojan survivor, what's your next move? Flee like Aeneas or plot revenge? And if you're a Greek, do you brag about the horse or keep quiet about the war crimes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's stir the pot. Part 3's done, but the story's echoes linger. Part 4 will unpack the legacy, how Troy's fall shaped culture, inspired art, and became the ultimate warning about trust and trickery. Hit like, subscribe, and brace for the final dive into this historical dumpster fire. Alright, you've stuck with us through the Trojan horse saga's chaos, Paris's epic simp move, the Greeks' sneaky wooden monstrosity, and Troy's flaming collapse. Welcome to Part 4, the grand finale, where we pick through the wreckage to see how this disaster shaped history, culture, and our collective obsession with not trusting shiny gifts. Picture the scene. Troy's ashes are cold, the survivors are scattered, and the gods are probably sipping ambrosia, laughing at the mess they made. This is where the pain of survival meets the bitter irony of legacy, and the absurdity of it all becomes a warning etched in stone for 3,000 years. Ever been betrayed by something that looked too good to be true? Drop your story in the comments. Let's see if it tops Troy's monumental oopsie. The fall of Troy isn't just a city going up in flames. It's a cultural earthquake that ripples through time. The year's roughly 1200 BCE, and the Bronze Age is teetering. The Mycenaean Greeks, the victors, think they're on top, but their win is a poisoned chalice. Their palaces, Mycenae, Pylos, Tyrans, crumble soon after, not from Trojan revenge, but from internal rot, invasions, and maybe even climate shifts. The linear B script they used, gone. Greece plunges into a dark age, a 400-year gap where writing vanishes and stories are whispered around fires. The Trojan War, for all its glory, is a death knell for the Greek Bronze Age. Irony? The winners lose almost as hard as the losers. But Troy's story doesn't die. It's immortalized, first through oral bards, then inked by poets like Homer and Virgil. The Iliad, written centuries later around 750 BCE, captures the war's final weeks, Achilles' rage, Hector's tragedy, but skips the horse. That juicy bit comes from later works like Virgil's Aeneid, penned in Rome around 20 BCE, and Quintus Smyrnaeus' Post-Homerica. These epics turned Troy into a myth, a blend of fact and fiction that's more vibe than history. And was there a real Trojan War? Probably. Excavations at Hisarlik, Turkey, likely Troy, show a city burned around 1180 BCE with bronze weapons and signs of siege. The horse? Maybe a siege engine, a battering ram, or just a sexy metaphor for betrayal. Either way, it's the ultimate gotcha that keeps us hooked. Let's talk Aeneas, the Trojan who gets out alive. He's not just a survivor, he's a walking plot device for Rome's origin story. After fleeing Troy with his dad on his back and his kid in tow, Aeneas wanders the Mediterranean, dodging storms and divine tantrums. He lands in Carthage, breaks Queen Dido's heart, another tragedy, and finally hits Italy. There, he battles locals, marries a princess, and lays the groundwork for Rome. Virgil's Aeneid, written to flatter Emperor Augustus, spins Aeneas as Rome's mythic founder. The irony? Troy's destruction births an empire that'll outshine Greece, conquer the Mediterranean, and spread the story on stone inscriptions and scrolls. Losers become winners, eventually. The pain of survival lingers in the survivor's fates. Andromache, Hector's widow, is enslaved, passed around Greek lords like a trophy. She ends up in Epirus, married to another Trojan survivor, but her life's a shadow of her past. Cassandra, cursed prophetess, meets her end in Mycenae, axed alongside Agamemnon by his vengeful wife, Clytemnestra. Helen and Menelaus limp back to Sparta, their marriage a masterclass in awkward silences. Odysseus? His 10-year odyssey, Cyclops, sirens, shipwrecks, is a survival gauntlet, courtesy of Poseidon's grudge. By the time he reaches Ithaca, he's a wreck, fighting suitors to reclaim his home. These aren't happy endings, they're scars that scream, surviving ain't living. The gods? They're the real MPVS of absurdity. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, they treat the war like a cosmic game night, betting on mortals like we bet on sports. Athena and Hera, still salty about Paris picking Aphrodite in that beauty contest, cheer as Troy burns. Apollo, Troy's patron, bails when the going gets tough. Poseidon, unpaid for his wall-building gig, drowns half the Greek fleet for fun. These deities aren't wise. They're spoiled brats with lightning bolts, and mortals pay the price. The Trojan horse? Less a divine plan, more a prank they greenlit to mess with everyone. Imagine Zeus chuckling, let's see if they fall for a giant horse. Spoiler, they will. The cultural legacy is where Troy's fall really shines. The story becomes the DNA of Western literature. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey set the template for epics. Heroes, quests, tragic flaws. Aeschylus' Oresteia dives into Agamemnon's murder and the revenge cycle, turning Troy's fallout into Greek tragedy. Euripides gives us The Trojan Women, a gut-punch play about Andromache and Hecuba's grief, showing war's toll on the powerless. Fast forward to today. Troy inspires everything from Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida to Hollywood's Troy with Brad Pitt's Achilles strutting in a leather skirt. The horse itself, a universal symbol of deception. Beware Greeks bearing gifts is a proverb we still toss around when someone's deal looks too sweet. Archaeology keeps the story grounded. Heinrich Schliemann, a 19th century treasure hunter, dug up Hisarlik and declared it Troy. He found gold, walls, and burn layers, but his methods were more bulldozer than scientist. Modern digs confirm a city, call it Troy 7A, destroyed around 1180 BCE, likely by war. No horse bones, though. The real Troy was a trade hub, controlling routes between Asia and Europe, which explains why the Greeks wanted it gone. Was Helen the cause? Nah, more likely gold, grain, and power. But a love story sells better than geopolitics. The pain of survival in 1200 BCE is a gut check. No Geneva Conventions, no Red Cross. Lose a war, and you're dead, enslaved, or homeless. Trojan civilians, farmers, weavers, kids, face slaughter or chains. Greek soldiers, scarred from a decade of dysentery and death, carried trauma home, if they made it. No therapists, just priests muttering about curses. Women like Andromache had no rights, no voice, just endurance. Men like Odysseus fought monsters, but the real monster was the war's toll. Friends gone, homes lost, sanity frayed. The irony? Troy's fall is a warning we keep ignoring. History's littered with Trojan horses, deceptions we fall for because we're too proud, too greedy, or too tired to think. The Greeks' victory was Pyrrhic. They burned Troy but torched their own future. The Mycenaeans fade, while Rome rises from Troy's ashes. And the gods? They move on to the next game, leaving mortals to clean up the mess. Sarcasm time. The Trojans tore down their own walls to drag in a sketchy gift from enemies who'd been trying to kill them for 10 years. Brilliant. The Greeks spent a decade and countless lives to prove they're the kings of pranks, only to sail home to storms, betrayals, and a collapsing civilization. Slow clap, everyone. And us? We're still making movies about this, romanticizing the carnage while ignoring the lesson. Maybe check the fine print before you accept that shiny new thing. The Trojan horse's legacy is its staying power. It's not just a story, it's a mirror. Every time a politician spins a too-good-to-be-true promise, every time a company sells a game-changer that screws you over, that's the horse creaking through your gates. We laugh at the Trojans, but we've all been them. Trusting, hopeful, doomed. Engage, folks. What's the modern Trojan horse you've seen? Crypto scams, shady apps, or something else? Drop it in the comments. And if you could rewrite Troy's ending, who gets a happy ending? Hector, Cassandra, or maybe even the horse? Let's hear your take. This saga's done, but its echoes are everywhere. From ancient epics to your spam folder, the Trojan horse reminds us, trust carefully, question everything, and maybe don't throw a party for a gift from your enemies. Thanks for riding this historical roller coaster. Like, subscribe, and tell us, what other ancient disaster needs our sarcastic spotlight? Hey guys, picture this. A teenage girl shipped off to marry a stranger, drowning in diamonds while her people starve, whispering, let them eat cake as revolutions brew. But was Marie Antoinette really the villain, or just a pawn in history's cruelest farce? From opulent balls to the guillotine's kiss, her life was a glittering nightmare of excess, exile, and execution. Stick around as we unpack the absurdity, the drama, and the decapitation that define the last queen of France. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. Ah, Marie Antoinette. The name alone conjures images of towering wigs, endless parties, and that infamous cake line. But let's strip away the Hollywood gloss and peer into the absurd, painful reality of her life. Born Maria Antonia Josefa Johanna in 1755, she was the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa of Austria and Holy Roman Emperor Francis I. Imagine being the runt of a royal litter, overlooked amid a sea of siblings, yet destined for a throne that would crush her. Her childhood in Vienna's Hofburg Palace was a bizarre blend of privilege and neglect. Lessons in French and dancing, sure, but no real education on ruling or empathy. Maria Theresa, that iron-fisted matriarch, treated her kids like chess pieces, marrying them off to secure alliances. Little Marie? She was the pawn sent to France, a human treaty to patch up centuries of Habsburg Bourbon beef. The absurdity kicks in early. At 14, she's betrothed to Louis Auguste, the Dauphin of France, a chubby, awkward teen who'd rather tinker with locks than lock eyes with his bride. Their proxy marriage in 1770 was a farce, Marie standing in a Vienna church, while some stand-in muttered vows in Paris. Then came the handover at the Rhine River, a symbolic stripping. French ladies yanked off her Austrian clothes, down to her underwear, and redressed her in Versailles finery. Leave your old life behind, they said, as if shedding a gown could erase her homesickness. Painful, right? A kid, ripped from family, thrust into a court of vipers who sneered at her Austrian accent and called her l'Autrichienne, the Austrian bitch. Arrival at Versailles? Oh, the irony drips like the palace fountains. This sprawling monstrosity, built by Louis XIV to cage the nobility, was a gilded prison of etiquette and excess. Marie's first meeting with Louis was comically disastrous. He mumbled, blushed, and bolted. Their wedding night? A big fat nothing. For 7 years, folks, 7, Their marriage went unconsummated, thanks to Louis's phimosis, a painful foreskin issue, and sheer shyness. Court gossips whispered about impotence, infertility, even lesbian affairs for Marie. Picture the weight on her shoulders, a teenage monarch, expected to secure the dynasty with children, yet trapped in a marriage that wasn't working in the most crucial way. Versailles. Life was a nightmare wrapped in silk. Morning started with the lever, a ritual where nobles watched her dress, layer by layer, in outfits costing fortunes. One gown could feed a village, but hey, fashion was power. Marie's poof hairstyles piled high with feathers and ships were absurd statements. Once, she wore a model of the French Navy in her hair during a naval victory celebration. But beneath the fluff? Pain. Those wigs weighed pounds, causing headaches and hair loss. And the corsets? Bone-crushing, literally cinching waists to impossible thinness while she gasped for air. Survival in the past meant enduring bodily torture for beauty's sake, all while famine loomed outside the gates. Let's talk money, because the absurdity of royal finances could make a banker weep. France was bankrupt from wars, like the American Revolution, which Louis bankrolled to spite Britain, costing billions in today's terms. Marie? She got blamed for the debt, dubbed Madame Deficit. Sure, she splurged, diamonds, dresses, a fake peasant village at Trianon where she played milkmaid, but the real culprits? Corrupt ministers and endless court pensions. Marie's "let them eat cake" quip? Total myth, probably from Rousseau's writings predating her arrival. Yet it stuck, a sarcastic emblem of her supposed callousness. When bread riots hit Paris in the 1770s, she wrote letters begging for aid, but history paints her as the villain, munching brioche while peasants starved. Her personal pain deepened with motherhood, or the lack thereof. After Joseph's visit in 1777, her brother, Emperor Joseph II, who bluntly advised Louis on bedroom matters. They finally got it together. Surgery fixed Louis' issue and boom, Marie gave birth to Marie-Thérèse in 1778. Joy? Tempered by tragedy. Her first son died young, another battled tuberculosis. Imagine birthing heirs in public. Yes, the lever extended to labor, with crowds watching her scream. Survival meant producing bodies for the throne, no matter the agony. And Louis? Now, King Louis XVI after his grandpa's death, he was a well-meaning klutz, more interested in hunting than governing. Marie stepped up, influencing policy, but her Austrian roots made her a scapegoat for every failure. The court was a snake pit of intrigue. Factions plotted, the king's brothers schemed for the throne. Mistresses like Madame de Barry, Louis XV's ex, mocked Marie's inexperience. De Barry's diamond necklace affair in 1785? Pure absurdity. A con artist tricked a cardinal into buying a gaudy necklace for Marie, forging letters. Marie never wanted it, but the scandal exploded. The Queen's necklace? Trial painted her as greedy. Public pamphlets, those 18th century tweets spread pornographic lies. Marie betting everyone from guards to her sister-in-law. The pain of defamation, a woman slandered as a whore while trapped in a loveless, dutiful life. As the 1780s rolled, France teetered, bad harvest, taxes crushing the poor, Enlightenment ideas bubbling. Marie tried reforms, cutting court expenses, supporting education, but too little, too late. The Estates General in 1789 called to fix finances. It ignited revolution. Nobles, clergy, commoners clashed. The Third Estate formed the National Assembly. Marie urged Louis to crack down, but he dithered. Bastille fell July 14, 1789. Mobs stormed the prison, heads on pikes. The royal family, whisked to Paris under protection that felt like house arrest at Tuileries Palace. Life in Paris was a downgrade from Versailles' glamour to gritty survival. Mobs chanted for her head, calling her the Austrian wolf. Escape attempts flopped. The flight to Varennes in 1791 was a comedy of errors. Disguised as servants, they got caught due to Louis's recognizable face on coins. Back to Paris, now prisoners. Marie's hair turned white overnight from stress, like a bad dye job from hell. Her kids suffered. Son Louis Charles ripped away, brainwashed by revolutionaries. The pain of a mother watching her child tortured, absurd, cruel history at its finest. The monarchy fell August 1792. Louis tried as a citizen, guillotined January 1793. Marie heard the cheers from her cell. Widowed at 37, her trial? A farce in October 1793, accused of everything from incest with her son to treason. The evidence? Forged letters, wild claims. She defended herself with dignity. I was a wife, I obeyed my husband. But the mob wanted blood. Sentenced to death, she rode to the scaffold in an open cart, jeered by crowds. The guillotine fell, clean, quick, but the build-up? Years of absurd suffering. Yet Marie's legacy endures, a sarcastic twist, a villainized in life, romanticized in death. Films portray her as frivolous, but she was a product of her time. Naive, extravagant, but not evil. The pain of survival in the past, women as political pawns, bodies as state property, reputation shredded by rumor. As part 1 wraps, we're just scratching the surface of her early years. What's next? A revolution's roar, escapes gone wrong? Drop a comment. Do you think Marie deserved her fate, or was she history's scapegoat? Share below. It keeps the conversation alive. But wait, let's linger on her youth a bit more, because the absurdity deserves unpacking. Back in Austria, Marie was the wild child, skipping lessons to play with dogs, her education a joke. Maria Theresa scolded her handwriting as like a cat's, yet shipped her off anyway. Arrival in France, 70 carriages, 376 horses, a procession fit for a goddess. But the welcome? Chilly. French courtiers resented the alliance, mocking her flat chest and crooked teeth. Braces were a thing even then, metal wires torturing her mouth. Wedding day, May 16th, 1770. Versailles Chapel ablaze with candles. Fireworks later caused a stampede, killing 132. Ominous start. Honeymoon? Louis left her alone, preferring sleep. For years, she wrote desperate letters home. I am terribly young to be so unhappy. Pain masked by parties, she gambled fortunes at cards, losing what could buy farms. But gambling was court culture. Refusal meant isolation. Her fashion empire, Rose Bertin, her stylist, created 300 gowns yearly. One, the chemise à la reine, a simple muslin dress, sparked outrage, too casual for a queen. Absurd, criticized for excess, then for simplicity. Petit Trianon, her retreat, a fake farm with perfumed sheep where she escaped court. Harmless fun. To starving peasants it screamed mockery. Family dynamics. Louisa's aunts, the old hens, plotted against her. Brother-in-law Provence spread rumors. Marie found solace in friends like Princess de Lamballe. Loyal, but doomed. As tensions rose, bread shortages hit. Marie donated to charity, but pamphlets twisted it. Let them eat brioche, likely said by another royal decades earlier, but pinned on her. Sarcastic history, the quote that defined her never left her lips. Economic woes. Calonne's reforms failed, Necker's too. Marie pushed for change, but her foreign birth doomed her. The diamond necklace affair details. Cardinal Rohan, duped by Jeanne de la Motte, bought a 2,800-carat necklace. Forged signatures, a prostitute impersonating Marie in midnight meetings. Trial exposed court corruption, but Marie's name was mud. By 1788, famine peaked. Necker recalled, a States General summoned. Marie feared for her kids. Daughter's death in 1787 broke her. Bastille, mob's fury unleashed. Women's March, October 1789. Thousands stormed Versailles, demanding bread. They invaded bedrooms, killing guards. Marie fled in nightgown. Family evacuated to Paris. In Tuileries, under guard, she plotted with Mirabeau, then Barnave. But radicals won. Flight to Varennes, coach stuck in mud, recognized at an inn, back as traitors. Temple prison after monarchy's fall. Louis' execution. Marie fainted hearing the drum roll. Her imprisonment, stripped of finery in rags hemorrhaging from illness, perhaps cancer. Trial. Eber accused her of molesting her son. She replied, nature itself refuses to answer such a charge. Crowd silent, but verdict guilty. Last moments. wrote farewell letter, hair shorn, white chemise, carte de place de la Révolution, where she apologized for stepping on executioner's foot, polite to the end. Legacy, buried in unmarked grave, later reinterred. Influence on fashion, art endures. But the pain, a girl who wanted love got politics. Survival's cost, her head. Welcome back, mates, to the glittering, gut-wrenching saga of Marie Antoinette, where silk gowns mask a world of betrayal, bread riots, and the slow grind of a revolution, ready to snap her neck. Last time, we left our teenage queen stumbling into Versailles, a naive Austrian pawn in a French snake pit, her unconsummated marriage and lavish spending setting the stage for a PR disaster. Now, in part 2, we dive into the 1780s, where the stakes skyrocket. Famine, scandal, and a diamond necklace fiasco turn her into France's favorite villain. Buckle up for a ride through the absurd excess and raw pain of a queen trying to survive a world that's already sharpening the guillotine. Drop a comment. What's the wildest royal scandal you've heard of? Let's see if Marie's tops it. The 1780s hit France like a punch to a rotting gut. The treasury was bleeding. Decades of wars, including bankrolling the American Revolution, left the crown broke. Peasants starved as harvests failed, their taxes feeding Versailles' endless feasts. Marie Antoinette, now in her mid-20s, was no longer the wide-eyed girl of 1770. She'd grown into her role as queen, mother, and fashion icon, but every step deepened her trap. Her husband, Louis XVI, was a well-meaning disaster, more comfortable fixing clocks than fixing France. Marie, desperate to matter, dipped her toes into politics, but her Austrian blood made every move a lightning rod for hate. The irony? She tried to help, but history only remembers the cake. Versailles remained a gilded cage, its rituals absurd to the point of parody. The Daily Lever was a circus, nobles crowding to watch Marie dress, passing her chemise like it was a holy relic. Her poof hairstyles, now legendary, were engineering marvels, some 3 feet tall, studded with pearls, ribbons, even a tiny ship for a naval festival. But the pain? Those wigs yanked her scalp raw, and the corsets crushed her ribs, leaving her gasping. Fashion was power, but it came at a cost. Hours of prep, headaches, and whispers of Madame Deficit, as she spent what could have fed thousands. Survival meant looking the part, even if the part was a caricature. Her spending was infamous, but let's unpack the absurdity. Marie's dress budget hit 150,000 livres a year, enough to buy entire villages. Her Petit Trianon, a private retreat, had a fake Hamlet where she played peasant, milking perfumed cows and frolicking in muslin gowns. Sounds tone-deaf? Sure, but it was her escape from Versailles' suffocating rules, a place to breathe without eyes judging her every blink. The real excess was the court itself. 10,000 hangers-on, pensions for nobles who did nothing but gossip. Marie cut some costs, fewer banquets, smaller staff, but it was like bailing a sinking ship with a teacup. The public didn't care. They saw her diamonds and screamed for blood. The diamond necklace affair of 1784 to 85 was the scandal that lit the fuse. Picture this: a con woman, Jeanne de la Motte, scams Cardinal Rohan, a gullible aristocrat desperate to win Marie's favor. Jeanne forges letters claiming Marie wants a 2,800-carat diamond necklace worth 1.6 million livres. Think a mansion in today's money. Rohan buys it, thinking he's currying favor. A prostitute impersonates Marie in a midnight garden rendezvous to seal the deal. When the jeweler demands payment, the scam unravels and all hell breaks loose. Marie had nothing to do with it. She never even saw the necklace, but the trial was a public crucifixion. Pamphlets spread lies, Marie bathing in gold, seducing cardinals. The pain? Her name, already tarnished, became synonymous with greed. Survival meant enduring a nation's hate, with no defense but silence. Motherhood was her refuge, but even that was a battlefield. After years of bedroom failures, Marie birthed 4 kids by 1785. Marie-Thérèse, 2 Louis, and Sophie. Each labor was public, nobles gawking as she screamed, her body a state spectacle. Sophie died at 11 months, a gut punch Marie hid behind stoic smiles. Her son, Louis Joseph, the Dauphin, was frail, coughing blood from tuberculosis. Every cough was a reminder. Her job was to secure the Bourbon line, but fate mocked her. She doted on her kids, reading them stories, but court gossips twisted it. She's too soft, or worse, she's plotting with Austria. The irony, a mother's love made her a traitor in their eyes. Politics, a minefield. Louis XVI was spineless, swayed by every advisor. Marie stepped in, pushing for reforms to save the monarchy. She backed Jacques Necker, a finance minister who tried taxing nobles. Good luck with that. The aristocracy revolted, blaming her for meddling. Her letters to Austria begged for advice, but every word was intercepted, twisted into proof of treason. The pain of survival, every attempt to help painted her as the enemy. By 1787, bread riots swept Paris, mobs chanting death to the Austrian, while she huddled in Versailles, her kids' safety her only prayer. The court's social scene was a viper's nest of absurdity. Marie's inner circle, Princess de Lamballe, the sweet but doomed loyalist, and the flamboyant Polignac family, were her shield against the likes of Madame de Berry's old crew or Louis's scheming brothers. But loyalty came with a price. The Polignacs bled the treasury, their titles and estates gifts from a queen desperate for friends. When Marie threw parties, masked balls, operas in her private theater, pamphlets exaggerated them into orgies. One night, she danced till dawn in a golden gown, laughing with Lamballe. The next day, cartoons showed her as a harpy, draining France's coffers. Survival meant finding joy in stolen moments, knowing each one fueled the mob. The economy was a house of cards. Calonne, another minister, proposed reforms, but nobles blocked them. By 1788, famine gripped France. Bread prices soared, kids starved in streets. Marie donated to hospitals, but her charity was spat on. "Hypocrite!" the pamphlet screamed, while she wrote to her brother, "I fear for my children's lives." The Estates General, called in 1789 to fix the mess, was a Pandora's box. The Third Estate, commoners, demanded power, forming the National Assembly. Marie urged Louis to stand firm, but he waffled as usual. When the Bastille fell on July 14, 1789, the world shifted. Mobs paraded heads on pikes, and the royal family was forced to Paris, caged in the Tuileries Palace. Life in Paris was a grim pivot from Versailles' sparkle to survival's edge. The Tuileries, a dusty old palace, was their prison, guards watching every move. Mobs gathered outside, chanting for Marie's head. She kept up appearances, morning prayers, lessons for her kids, but fear was her shadow. The Women's March of October 1789 had set the tone. Thousands stormed Versailles, slaughtering guards, forcing the royals out. Marie escaped in her nightgown, clutching her daughter, the memory searing. Now in Paris, she plotted escape, her wit sharper than ever. "If we stay, we die," she told Louis, her sarcasm biting, "unless you think charm will stop a pike." The flight to Varennes in June 1791 was a tragicomic disaster. Disguised as servants, the royal family fled in a creaky coach, aiming for loyalist troops in Montmédy. Marie planned it, bribing drivers, forging passports. But Louis's face, plastered on every coin, betrayed them. At a tiny inn, a postmaster recognized him. The coach got stuck in mud. Militias swarmed, and back to Paris they went, jeered as traitors. Marie's hair, once golden, turned white from stress, her beauty fading under the weight of dread. Survival's cost, her pride, her hope, her youth. Back in Tuileries, under tighter guard, Marie became a shadow queen. She wrote coded letters to Austria, begging for rescue, but help never came. The Legislative Assembly, now ruling, leaned radical. Mirabeau, a moderate ally, died. Barnave, another, lost sway. The mob's power grew. Sans-culottes, wild-eyed revolutionaries, demanded blood. August 10, 1792, sealed the monarchy's fate. A mob stormed Tuileries, killing Swiss guards. Marie and family fled to the Assembly, then were locked in the Temple prison, a grim tower reeking of damp stone. Prison life was raw survival. Stripped of titles, they were citizen capet now. Marie's gowns were rags, her health crumbling, possibly uterine cancer, her bleeding constant. Her son, Louis Charles, was ripped away, brainwashed by guards to hate her. The pain? Unimaginable. a mother hearing her child curse her, his voice twisted by lies. Louis XVI's trial was a farce. Guillotine, January 21st, 1793, his execution cheered by thousands. Marie heard the drums from her cell, widowed, alone, her kids all she had left. Her own trial loomed, but let's pause on the absurdity of her crimes. Pamphlets painted her as a monster, spending France into ruin, betting half the court, plotting with Austria. Most were lies, but truth didn't matter. The revolution needed a scapegoat, and Marie, the foreign queen, fit perfectly. Her defiance grew. She smuggled letters, planned escapes, even as hope faded. "I will not bend," she wrote, her pen shaking. As part 2 closes, Marie's in the temple, the guillotine's shadow looming. Revolution's fire burns hotter. Will she outwit it or fall? Drop a comment. Could you endure her prison life, or would you break? Share below. Let's keep this saga burning. Here we are, mates, plunging back into the tragic, glittering train wreck that was Marie Antoinette's life. A saga of cake myths, courtly backstabbing, and a revolution that's about to turn her world into a bloody circus. Last time, we left her in the Tuileries Palace, a royal prisoner plotting a doomed escape while France starved and mobs sharpened their pitchforks. Now, in part 3, we're diving into the early 1790s, where the French Revolution kicks into overdrive, dragging Marie from queen to scapegoat to cell block survivor. Expect absurdity, heartbreak, and a dash of her defiant sarcasm as she faces a nation that wants her head. Ready for the chaos? Drop a comment. What's the toughest choice you'd make in a revolution? Fight, flee, or beg? Let's see how you'd fare in Marie's shoes. The early 1790s were France's descent into madness, and Marie Antoinette was the lightning rod for it all. The monarchy was crumbling, the economy a smoking ruin, and the streets of Paris a cauldron of rage. Louis XVI, her hapless husband, was a king in name only, his indecision a death sentence for the crown. Marie, now 35, was no longer the giddy teen of Versailles. Her golden hair was streaked with white, her health failing, possibly from uterine cancer, her body bleeding as often as her heart. Yet, she clung to her role as mother and queen, her wit sharp as ever, even as the guillotine's shadow loomed. The irony? She'd tried to save France, but France wanted her blood. Life in the Tuileries Palace was a grim parody of royalty. Gone were the silk gowns and towering pouf. Marie wore simple dresses, her jewels pawned or stolen. The palace, once a grand residence, was now a prison, its windows barred, guards at every door. Mobs gathered daily, their chants, "Death to the Austrian," a constant soundtrack. Marie kept up appearances for her kids, Marie-Thérèse and Louis-Charles, teaching them lessons, sewing their clothes, but fear was her shadow. Every creak of the floorboards was a potential assassin, every letter a risk of betrayal. Survival meant playing the dutiful mother while plotting in secret, her sarcasm a shield. They call me a wolf, but wolves fight for their pack. The flight to Varennes in June 1791 had been a disaster, a slapstick tragedy that left the royals humiliated. Marie had orchestrated it, bribing drivers, forging passports, disguising the family as servants. But Louis's face, plastered on every coin, betrayed them. Captured in a muddy backwater, they were dragged back to Paris, jeered by crowds waving pikes. The aftermath was brutal. The Tuileries became a fortress, guards doubled, and Marie's every move watched. She wrote coded letters to her brother, Emperor Leopold II of Austria, begging for rescue. "We are lost," she scrawled, her pen shaking. But Austria was distracted and her pleas sank into the void. The pain? A queen reduced to begging, her pride shredded like her old gowns. The revolution was a runaway beast by 1792. The National Assembly gave way to the Radical Legislative Assembly, dominated by Jacobins and Girondins who smelled blood. Marie tried to play the game, charming moderates like Barnave, who urged compromise. "Dissolve the mob," she whispered to Louis, her voice sharp, "or they'll dissolve us." But Louis dithered, vetoing reforms, alienating allies. The declaration of Pillnitz from Austria and Prussia, threatening intervention, only fanned the flames. France declared war on Austria in April 1792. and Marie, the Austrian queen, was branded a traitor. Pamphlets flew, accusing her of leaking battle plans to her brother. Lies, mostly, but truth was irrelevant when the mob ruled. August 10th, 1792 was the monarchy's death knell. A mob of sans-culottes, those wild-eyed, trouserless revolutionaries, stormed the Tuileries, slaughtering Swiss guards, their blood pooling on marble floors. Marie stood firm, urging Louis to rally the troops, but he froze. "We must go," she hissed, her sarcasm biting, "unless you fancy a pike for a crown." They fled to the Legislative Assembly, seeking refuge, but it was a trap. The monarchy was suspended, and the royal family was carted to the Temple prison, a grim medieval tower that reeked of damp stone and despair. Survival now meant enduring a cell, not a palace, with no allies but each other. The Temple was where hope went to die. Stripped of titles, they were citizen Capet now, locked in a cold, drafty tower with moldy walls and straw mattresses. Marie's health crumbled, constant bleeding, fainting spells, her body betraying her as much as France did. Her kids were her anchor, Marie-Thérèse, a defiant teen, and Louis-Charles, the frail Dauphin, barely 7. She read them stories, mended their clothes, but the guards' cruelty was relentless. They taunted her, spat in her food, played revolutionary songs to mock her. The absurdity? One guard offered her a tricolor cockade to wear, laughing, "Join the revolution, citoyenne." Marie's reply was pure fire. "I'd rather wear my own hair." Survival's pain, defiance was all she had left. Louis XVI's trial in December 1792 was a farce, a scripted execution. Accused of treason, he was guillotined January 21st, 1793, the crowd's cheers echoing through Paris. Marie heard the drums from her cell, collapsing in grief. Widowed at 37, she was now Widow Capet, her title a mockery. Her son, Louis-Charles, was ripped from her arms, sent to a lower cell where guards brainwashed him to hate her. The pain was visceral. Her boy, forced to recite lies about her, calling her a monster. She wrote in secret, "My heart breaks, but I will not." Survival meant clinging to her daughter, the last thread of her old life. The Temple's routine was a grind of absurdity and torment. Mornings brought watery gruel, evenings cold silence. Marie smuggled letters via loyal guards, plotting with royalists for rescue. The Carnation Plot, a failed escape in 1793, involved notes hidden in flowers, romantic, but doomed. Guards tightened their grip, searching her cell, confiscating her pens. She hid her journal in a wall crack, its pages her only voice. "They cage me, but my soul is free." The irony? Freedom was a dream, and dreams were dangerous. The revolution's fever spiked. Robespierre and the Jacobins pushed the reign of terror, guillotines working overtime. Marie's allies, Princess de Lamballe, her gentle friend, met gruesome ends. Lamballe's head was paraded on a pike outside the Temple, her blonde curls bloodied. Marie saw it from her window, fainting, her scream silent. The pain of losing a friend, of seeing her mutilated, was a wound no poultice could heal. Yet she stood tall, her sarcasm a weapon. "They think to break me, but I am not so soft." Her own trial loomed, a spectacle of revolutionary vengeance. Moved to the Conciergerie prison in August 1793, a dank dungeon called the Antechamber of Death, Marie faced her fate. The cell was a nightmare, wet straw, rats, a single candle. Her health collapsed, she bled constantly, her strength fading. Yet she prepared for trial, sewing a black dress, her last act of defiance. "If I must die," she told a guard, "I'll do it as a queen." The absurdity, a woman who'd lost everything, still clinging to dignity in a world that spat on it. The trial, October 14th to 15th, 1793, was a kangaroo court. Prosecutors, led by Hébert, threw every lie at her, treason, orgies, even incest with her son. That last charge broke her silence. "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to answer such a charge," she said, her voice steady, the crowd hushed. The jury didn't care, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to death, she wrote a final letter to her sister-in-law. "I am calm, as one is when conscience is clear." Survival's endgame, facing the blade with grace. The morning of October 16, 1793 was her last. Her hair was shorn, her hands bound. Dressed in a white chemise, she rode in an open cart to the Place de la Révolution, jeered by thousands. The guillotine loomed, its blade gleaming. She stepped on the executioner's foot, apologizing. "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." Her last words, pure Marie, polite to the end. The blade fell, her head rolled, and the crowd roared. Survival's cost, her life, her legacy, her truth. But let's linger on the absurdity of her downfall. The revolution devoured its own, Danton, Robespierre, all guillotined by 1794. Marie's crimes, exaggerated or invented. Her spending was a drop in the bucket compared to war debts. Her treason, desperate letters to save her family. The cake myth, a lie that stuck, branding her as heartless. History's sarcasm, she was a flawed woman, not a monster, but the mob needed a villain. Her kid's fate was the deepest cut. Louis Charles, the lost Dauphin, died in prison at 10, abused and broken. Marie-Thérèse survived, exiled to Austria, haunted forever. The pain of a mother's loss echoed beyond the grave. As Part 3 closes, Marie's story nears its bloody end. The guillotine waits, but her legacy, villain or victim, is still taking shape. Drop a comment. Was Marie a tragic figure or a spoiled queen? Share your take below. Let's keep the fire burning. Alright mates, we're at the final act of Marie Antoinette's wild tragic ride. A tale of glittering gowns, vicious mobs, and a guillotine that's practically winking at her. Last time, we left her in the Temple prison, a widowed mother clinging to defiance as the French Revolution turned France into a slaughterhouse. Now, in Part 4, we plunge into 1793, where the reign of terror grips Paris. Marie's fate is sealed, and her legacy gets twisted into history's favorite punching bag. Expect absurd cruelty, raw survival, and a sarcastic spark that even the blade can't snuff out. Ready for the end? Drop a comment. If you were Marie, would you face the guillotine with courage or beg for mercy? Let's see your mettle. Paris in 1793 was a city possessed, the revolution a beast devouring its own. The guillotine, that gleaming symbol of liberty, worked overtime, heads rolling like apples in a market. Marie Antoinette, now 37, was no longer a queen, but Widow Capet, a shadow in the Temple prison's damp tower. Her health was a wreck, constant bleeding, likely from uterine cancer, her body as broken as her spirit. Her daughter, Marie-Thérèse, was her last anchor. Her son, Louis Charles, had been torn away, brainwashed by guards to curse her name. The pain was a knife in her gut, sharper than any executioner's blade. Yet, Marie's defiance burned, her sarcasm a flicker in the dark. They take my child, but not my will. Life in the Temple was a cruel mockery of her past. No more silk gowns or perfumed sheep. She wore patched rags, her once golden hair shorn to a gray stubble. Meals were gruel and stale bread, served with guards' taunts. "Eat, citoyen, no cake today." Her reply, sharp as ever, "Keep your bread, I've had my fill of your hate." The absurdity was staggering. A woman who dined on gold plates now fought rats for crumbs. Survival meant swallowing pride, stitching clothes for her daughter, and hiding a journal in the cell's cracks, its pages her only rebellion. I am caged, but my heart is free. The reign of terror, led by Robespierre's cold fanaticism, turned Paris into a paranoid bloodbath. Friends like Princess de Lamballe were long gone, their heads on pikes. Marie's escape attempts, daring plots like the Carnation, with notes smuggled in flowers, fizzled under tightened security. Guards searched her cell daily, confiscating pens, tearing her mattress. One sneered, "Plotting again, Austrian?" She shot back, "Only to plot your manners." Defiance was her shield, but it couldn't stop the inevitable. The Jacobins needed a scapegoat, and Marie, the foreign queen, was perfect, her every breath proof of treason. In August 1793, they moved her to the conciergerie, a dungeon so grim it was dubbed the antechamber of death. Her cell was a wet, rat-infested hole lit by a single candle. Her health collapsed, fainting spells, hemorrhages, her body wasting away. Yet she sewed a black dress for her trial, a final act of dignity. "If I must die," she told a guard. "I'll do it as myself." The absurdity? A queen crafting her own funeral gown, while mobs chanted for her blood outside. Survival's cost, enduring a living grave, knowing the real one waited. The trial, October 14th to 15th, 1793, was a grotesque farce. The Revolutionary Tribunal, a kangaroo court, piled on charges: treason, squandering France's wealth, even incest with her son. That last lie, spewed by Prosecutor Hébert, broke her silence. Standing tall, her voice clear, she said, "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to answer such a charge against a mother." The crowd fell silent, a rare moment of shame, but the jury was unmoved. Evidence? Forged letters, wild rumors, pamphlets painting her as a vampire queen. Her defense was calm. "I was a wife who obeyed her husband, a mother who loved her children." Guilty, they declared, sentencing her to death. Her final letter to her sister-in-law was pure Marie. "I am calm, as one is when conscience is clear." October the 16th, 1793, dawned cold and gray. At 4 a.m., guards burst in, shearing her hair, binding her hands. Dressed in a white chemise, she was paraded through Paris in an open cart, the crowd's jeers a deafening roar. "Death to the Austrian!" they screamed, spitting as she passed. Her face was pale but composed, her eyes scanning the mob, not with fear, but with a queen's disdain. At the Place de la Révolution, the guillotine loomed, its blade a silver promise. She climbed the scaffold, accidentally stepping on the executioner's foot. "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it," she said, her last words polite to the absurd end. The blade fell at 12:15 p.m. Her head rolled and the crowd erupted. Her body was tossed in an unmarked grave, her story seemingly over. But the absurdity didn't end with her death. The revolution ate itself. Danton, Hébert, Robespierre, all guillotined by 1794. Marie's crimes were a mix of lies and exaggerations. Her spending? A fraction of France's war debts. Her treason? Desperate letters to save her family. The cake myth? A fiction pinned on her to fuel hate. History's sarcasm. She was no saint, but nor was she the monster of the pamphlets. Her real sin? Being a foreign woman in a world that feared both. Her children's fate was the cruelest twist. Louis Charles, the lost Dauphin, died in 1795 at 10, abused and neglected in a filthy cell. Rumors of his survival sparked legends, but the truth was bleaker. His body broken, his mind gone. Marie-Thérèse, the sole survivor, was exiled to Austria in 1795. Haunted by loss, her memoirs a testament to her mother's love. The pain of a family torn apart lingered beyond the grave, a wound no revolution could justify. Marie's legacy is a paradox, dripping with irony. To the mob, she was Madame Deficit, the Austrian whore who bled France dry. To romantics, she was a tragic queen, a victim of a brutal age. The truth? Somewhere in between. A flawed woman, naive in youth, extravagant in power, but fierce in love and defiance. Her fashion, those poufs, that muslin chemise, shaped style for centuries. Her story, retold in films and books, swings between villainy and martyrdom. The sarcasm of history. The mob killed her, but art made her immortal. Let's unpack the economic absurdity one last time. France's debt, billions in today's money, came from wars and court corruption, not Marie's dresses. Ministers like Cologne hid the rot, while nobles dodged taxes. Marie's charity, hospitals, orphanages, was ignored, her spending magnified. The revolution promised equality but delivered chaos, its leaders as greedy as the aristocrats they despised. Socially, the court was a microcosm of madness. Versailles' rituals, lever, balls, gossip, were a theater of power. But Marie's role was scripted. She played the queen, but the script was written by a world that hated her kind. Foreign, female, free-spirited. Her friends, like Lamballe, paid with their lives. Her enemies, like Provence, outlived her, scheming in exile. Health's horror was relentless. Marie's bleeding, her fainting, her broken body. She endured it all with no medicine, no mercy. The revolution's justice was a mockery. her trial a stage for lies, yet she faced it with grace, her final letter a testament to a soul unbroken. The guillotine's legacy is the final irony. Built for equality, noble or peasant, all heads rolled the same. It became a symbol of terror. Marie's death didn't save France, it fueled a cycle of vengeance. Her story, though, endures, a cautionary tale of excess, a hymn to resilience. As part 4 closes, Marie's head is gone, but her shadow lingers. Buried in a pit, later reinterred, she's a ghost in history's mirror. Villain, victim, or both? Drop a comment. What's Marie's real legacy to you? Tragic heroine or spoiled royal? Share below. Let's keep this tale alive. Share below. Let's keep this tale alive. Imagine sneezing your way to the grave while your neighbors blame it on bad stars or angry gods. Welcome to the Black Death, the medieval party crasher that turned Europe into a ghost town faster than you can say social distancing fail. If 2020 felt rough, try 1347, no vaccines, no Netflix, just rats, fleas, and a 50% chance of turning black and blue before keeling over. This is the story of history's deadliest uninvited guest, where survival meant dodging death in the most absurd ways. Stick around for the irony, the agony, and the face palms that make modern life look like a spa day. And hey, if you've got a pandemic survival tip from the past, drop it in the comments. What would you do if fleas were public enemy number 1? Ah, the Black Death. The name alone sounds like a heavy metal band, but it was way deadlier. Picture Europe in the 1300s, a continent of mud-splattered peasants toiling under feudal lords, knights clanking around in rusty armor, and monks scribbling prophecies about the end times. Life expectancy? Maybe 30 if you dodged famine, war, and the occasional witch hunt. Survival was a daily grind, plowing fields with oxen that might drop dead from exhaustion, eating bread that could be more sawdust than grain, and praying the next crusade didn't sweep you up. But hey, at least you had community. Villages crammed together, sharing wells, beds, and diseases like they were going out of style. Little did they know, a microscopic terrorist was about to turn that coziness into a coffin. The plague didn't just pop up in Europe like an unwanted in-law. It hitchhiked from the east, courtesy of the bustling Silk Road. Origins trace back to Central Asia around 1330, where nomadic tribes and traders swapped goods, stories, and unwittingly Yersinia pestis, the bacterium behind the bubonic nightmare. Imagine Mongol armies besieging the Crimean port of Kaffa in 1346. They're flinging plague-ridden corpses over the walls with catapults, biological warfare before it was cool. The Genoese merchants inside? They flee on ships, but not before picking up some furry stowaways. Black rats infested with fleas that carried the plague like tiny grim reapers. Those ships dock in Messina, Sicily, October 1347. Sailors stumble off, already sporting grotesque swellings, buboes in their groins and armpits, black spots blooming on their skin like deadly tattoos. The locals? Curious at first, then horrified as the sick drop dead in days. Rats scamper ashore, fleas jump to new hosts, and boom, the Black Death explodes. Symptoms? Oh, they're a horror show. Fever hits like a sledgehammer. Chills rattle your bones, headaches pound like a blacksmith's forge. Then the buboes swell to apple size, oozing pus and blood. If you're lucky, it's bubonic, 60% fatal, death in 3 to 7 days. Pneumonic? Cough up blood, infect others through air, 95% gone in 2 to 3 days. Septicemic? Blood poisoning turns you black inside out, dead before you know it. Pain? Agonizing? Survival? A cruel joke. Quarantine meant locking you in with your dying family, hoping the flagellant's whips scared the devil away. From Sicily, it spreads like gossip in a tavern. By 1348, it's in mainland Italy, hitting Genoa, Venice, Pisa. Merchants, pilgrims, soldiers carry it unwittingly. No one knows about germs. They blame miasma, bad air from swamps or earthquakes releasing poison from the earth, or Jews poisoning wells, leading to pogroms where thousands are burned alive because scapegoating is easier than science. Astrologers point to a planetary alignment in 1345. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and Aquarius, obviously. The Pope? He sits in Avignon, surrounded by fires to purify the air, while his doctors wear bird masks stuffed with herbs, looking like deranged ravens, thinking vinegar-soaked sponges ward off the plague. Absurd? You bet. Effective? About as much as dancing to cure a hangover. The pain of survival kicks in hard. Imagine a Florentine merchant like Boccaccio, who later writes the Decameron, 10 nobles fleeing to the countryside, swapping bawdy tales to forget the horror. But in reality, bodies pile up in streets, unburied because grave diggers die too fast. Families abandon loved ones, parents leave kids, kids ditch parents. Priests refuse last rites, fearing contagion. Dogs and cats are slaughtered en masse, ironically worsening things since they hunted rats. In Venice, they invent quarantine. Ships wait 40 days, 40, offshore. But enforcement? Spotty. Plague doctors roam, their waxed coats and beak masks a grim fashion statement, poking buboes with lances, bleeding patients because balance the humors. Survival tip: flagellate yourself bloody in processions, whipping to atone for sins, because nothing says please spare me God like self-inflicted wounds in a pandemic. By mid-1348, it's in France. Paris loses 800 a day, the Seine choked with corpses. King Philip VI orders autopsies, early science, but concludes it's divine wrath. Across the Channel, England gets hit June 1348, via a ship from Gascony docking in Dorset. Edward III's court flees, but his daughter Joan dies en route to marry the Castilian prince. Talk about bad timing. London? A cesspit of narrow streets, open sewers, overcrowded tenements. Plague thrives. Chroniclers like Froissart describe streets silent but for the cartman's cry, "Bring out your dead." Bodies stacked in pits at Smithfield, layered with dirt like a macabre lasagna. The absurd: people wear amulets of dried toads or arsenic, rub onions on buboes, or bathe in vinegar. One cure? Sit in a sewer, inhaling the good miasma to fight the bad. Yeah, because nothing combats plague like medieval plumbing. Scotland thinks they're safe, even raids northern England while the English are weakened, only to catch it from prisoners. By 1349, it's there too, wiping out a third. Norway gets it from a ghost ship drifting into Bergen, crew dead, rats alive. From there, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, though Iceland's isolation delays it till 1402. Eastern Europe, Poland fares better, maybe due to King Casimir's quarantines or fewer rats. Russia hit by 1351, Moscow burning bodies in mass pyres. The spread? Relentless. Trade routes become death highways, the Mediterranean via ships, overland through the Alps and Rhine. Fleas jump from rat to human, humans travel, cycle repeats. Winter slows it, but spring revives the horror. Societal absurdity ramps up. Feudalism creaks. With half the peasants dead, survivors demand higher wages. Lords? Furious. England's Statute of Labourers in 1351 caps wages at pre-plague levels, sparking resentment that boils into the peasants' revolt of 1381. Wat Tyler and crew storm London, behead the archbishop, because why not add rebellion to apocalypse? The church? Rocked. Priests die at higher rates, ministering to the sick. New recruits are rushed in, less educated, leading to corruption and later Reformation vibes. Art turns morbid. Dance, macabre murals show skeletons dancing with kings and beggars. Equality in death, how democratic. The pain? Visceral. Imagine a peasant family in a thatched hut. Dad comes home feverish after market. By morning, buboes swell. Mom tends him, catches it. Kids watch parents blacken and die, convulsing in agony. No antibiotics, just herbal poultices that do zilch. Or bloodletting, slice a vein, watch life drain, hope it helps. Orally, they swallow powdered emeralds if rich, or toad vomit if poor. Survival means isolation, board up windows, pray and hope the plague passes your door. But it doesn't discriminate. Rich flee to manors, but servants bring it. Pope Clement VI survives in Avignon, fires blazing, but loses a third of his cardinals. Zoom to specific nightmares. In Siena, Italy, chronicler Agnolo de Tura buries 5 sons with his own hands, writing, "No one weeps for the dead because all expect death." The city loses 80%. In Kilkenny, Ireland, Friar John Klyn scribbles his chronicle, ending with, less things worthy of remembrance perish with time. Then I leave parchment for continuing the work, if haply any man survive. He didn't. Absurd flagellant processions, hundreds marching, whipping themselves to bloody pulp, chanting hymns, believing pain appeases God. Towns welcomed them at first, then banned them as spreaders. Jews blamed everywhere. In Strasbourg, 2,000 burned on Valentine's Day, 1349. Romantic, right? Pope Clement condemns it, but mobs don't listen. By 1350, it's peaked in most places, but recurs in waves till the 1660s. Europe? Transformed. Population crash leads to abandoned villages, ghost towns reclaimed by forests, sheep farming booms because fewer people mean more land for wool, kick-starting economic shifts. Women gain opportunities. With men dead, they enter trades, though still second class. Medicine evolves slowly. Quarantines become standard, but germ theories centuries away. The irony? Medieval social distancing was locking infectees in homes with red crosses on doors. Lord have mercy, scrawled above. Effective? Kinda, but enforced by guards who might catch it too. Or wearing posies in pockets. Ring around the rosy, a plague rhyme? Pocket full of posies to mask the stench. Ashes from cremations. We all fall down, dead. Children's games born from horror. What about you? If you were a medieval peasant facing the Black Death, would you flee to the woods, join the flagellants, or stock up on toad amulets? Comment below with your survival strategy. Let's see who's got the best absurd plan. But this is just the beginning. The plague's origins and initial rampage set the stage for even wilder chaos. Societal upheavals, bizarre cures, and the long shadow it cast. Part 1 ends here, but the nightmare rolls on. Stay tuned for Part 2, where we dive into the peak horrors and human folly. Hit like if you're grimly fascinated, subscribe for more sarcastic history dives. Alright, you survived the Black Death's opening act. Congratulations on not sneezing yourself into oblivion yet. Welcome to Part 2, where the plague hits its gruesome peak, turning medieval Europe into a feverish nightmare of death cards, quack cures, and enough absurdity to make you wonder if humanity was auditioning for its own extinction. Picture 1348 to 1350. Cities reek of decay, priests are dropping faster than peasants, and the only thing spreading faster than the plague is panic. This is the Black Death at its most unhinged, where survival is a coin toss, and the coin's probably infected. Got a wild story about dodging disaster in your own life? Drop it in the comments. Let's see if it beats outrunning fleas in a medieval sewer. The plague's in full swing now, tearing through Europe like a grim reaper on a deadline. It landed in Sicily in 1347, and by 1348, it's a continent-wide catastrophe. Italy's port cities, Venice, Genoa, Florence, are hit hardest first. Florence loses half its people, some say 80%. Chronicler Giovanni Villani starts writing about it, then dies mid-sentence, his pen dropping as the plague claims him. Streets are choked with corpses, piled like firewood, because gravediggers can't keep up. Dogs drag bodies from shallow pits, and the stench is so bad, survivors wear cloths soaked in vinegar just to breathe. Imagine the horror. Your neighbor's fine at dawn. By dusk he's coughing blood. By midnight he's gone, and you're next if you hugged him. France falls next. Paris, the glittering heart of medieval culture, becomes a charnel house. Up to 800 die daily, the Seine a dumping ground for bodies. The University of Paris, full of brainy clerics, tries to explain it. Bad air, they say, or Saturn's influence. Their cure? Burn aromatic woods, avoid baths, water opens pores to miasma, and eat cold, dry foods. Spoiler, none of it works. The rich flee to countryside estates, but servants carry the fleas. King Philip VI orders a report, early epidemiology, but it's just guesses about divine wrath. Meanwhile, plague doctors in their creepy beak masks wander streets, lancing buboes with knives, charging a fortune for uselessness. Survival tip: if your doctors dress like a dystopian crow, maybe get a second opinion. England's no better. The plague hits London by late 1348, turning its muddy, crowded alleys into death traps. The River Thames is a sewer of waste and bodies. Bishop of London buys land for mass graves. Charterhouse Square, where skeletons still turn up in modern digs. Chronicler Henry Knighton writes of sheep wandering untended, fields unplowed, because farmers are dead. The absurd question mark. People clutch amulets of Saint Roch, patron of plague victims, or wear bags of arsenic around their necks. One cure, shove a live chicken's butt against your buboes to draw out the poison. Imagine the scene, feathers flying, patient screaming, chicken unimpressed, and the plague laughing. The plague's mechanics are brutal. Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas on black rats, thrives in cramped, filthy towns. Fleas bite, bacteria spread, lymph nodes swell into buboes, egg-sized, black, oozing agony. Bubonic kills 60% in days. Pneumonic, spread by coughs, kills 95% faster. Septicemic? You're dead before you notice. No one knows about germs. Robert Koch won't discover bacteria for 500 years. Instead, they blame Jews, foreigners, or sin. In Mainz, Germany, 6,000 Jews are burned in 1349, accused of well poisoning. Pope Clement VI in Avignon says it's nonsense, but mobs don't care. Survival means dodging both plague and pitchforks. The absurdity peaks with flagellants, bands of zealots roaming Europe, whipping themselves bloody to appease God. Picture hundreds of shirtless men, leather whips cracking, chanting psalms, splattering blood on cobblestones. Towns cheer at first, thinking they're holy. Then they notice flagellants spread plague faster, moving from village to village. By 1349, the Pope bans them, but not before they stir riots and pogroms. In Flanders, one group storms a town, kills Jews, then parties in a tavern. Because nothing says penance like a pint after murder. Economic chaos follows. With half the workforce dead, survivors demand more. Peasants once tied to land now bargain for wages. In England, a plowman might earn double what he did pre-plague. Lords panic, passing laws like the Statute of Laborers to freeze wages, but it backfires. Workers revolt or flee. In Florence, textile guilds collapse as weavers die, but survivors inherit wealth, sparking a mini-boom. Women, with men scarce, take jobs as brewers, bakers, even scribes. But don't get excited. Patriarchy snaps back fast and they're paid less. The pain? Imagine a widow inheriting her husband's shop, only to lose it to taxes or greedy in-laws. Survival's a tightrope. The church takes a beating. Priests die giving last rites, leaving parishes empty. New priests, rushed in, are barely literate, taking bribes for sacraments. This plants seeds for the Reformation. People start questioning Rome's grip. Art gets grim. Churches paint dance macabre scenes. Skeletons dragging popes and peasants to the grave. In Germany, Totentanz's poems spread the vibe. Death's the great equalizer, so live humbly. Spoiler, nobody does. Nobles keep feasting, commissioning gold-trimmed tombs while peasants starve. Let's zoom in. In Siena, Agnolo di Tura writes of burying his 5 kids. No one left to mourn, because all expect death. His words cut. I buried them with my own hands, and so did many others. In Avignon, the Pope's fires keep him safe, but his city loses half. Its people. Guy de Chauliac, a top surgeon, catches the plague, survives, and writes a medical treatise. Basically, Lance Buboes pray good luck. In Norway, a ship drifts into Bergen, crew dead, rats scurrying. By 1350, Scandinavia is reeling. Iceland dodges it till 1402, thanks to isolation, but when it hits, it's merciless. The absurd cures keep coming. Drink urine mixed with herbs, sleep with a goat to absorb toxins, burn corpses in town squares, hoping smoke cleanses. One bishop suggests ringing church bells to drive out miasma, because loud noises scare bacteria, obviously. In Paris, doctors advise standing by latrines, inhaling the good stench to counter the bad. Imagine the smell. Unwashed bodies, rotting flesh, and now you're sniffing a sewer on purpose. Survival's a gamble. Stay in town, risk infection, flee to the country, risk bandits or starvation. Social order phrase. In London, thieves loot plague houses, catching it in the process. Poetic justice. In Italy, Boccaccio's Decameron captures nobles hiding in villas, telling dirty jokes to forget the apocalypse. But real life? No one's laughing. Orphans roam, gangs form, and some towns turn to witch hunts, burning plague spreaders. In Messina, locals try to ban funerals to stop gatherings. Good luck enforcing that when everyone's dying. Quarantines evolve. Venice's 40-day ship isolation becomes standard, but land travel's harder to control. Pilgrims spread it to holy sites, turning shrines into super-spreader events. The pain's raw. A merchant in York watches his wife die, then his kids, then himself, no one to bury them. A nun in Toledo seals herself in a convent, only to hear sisters coughing through walls. No medicine works. Bloodletting weakens you. Herbs are placebo, prayers unanswered. The rich might afford a plague doctor, but his leeches and beak mask are theater, not cure. Peasants? Left to rot, their huts boarded up with red crosses. Lord have mercy, scrawled in chalk. Survival means luck. Maybe you're immune, maybe you're isolated, maybe you're just not dead yet. The irony? The Black Death's a great leveler, but not really. Nobles die, sure, but peasants die faster. Kings like Alfonso XI of Castile succumb, but serfs fill mass graves. The church preaches equality in death, yet clergy hoard tithes while villagers starve. And the plague spread? Blame trade, the lifeblood of Europe's wealth. Ships that brought silk and spices now bring death. The Silk Road, symbol of global connection, becomes a plague highway. What's your take? If you were a medieval plague doctor, what's your go-to quack cure? Chicken therapy or sewer sniffing? Comment below, let's hear your wildest ideas. And who's the real villain here? Fleas, bad science, or human panic? Spill it. Part 2's done, but the plague's shadow looms. Part 3 dives into the aftermath, how Europe rebuilt, the social upheavals, and the scars that lingered for centuries. Hit like, subscribe, and brace for more grim, sarcastic history. So, you've clawed through the Black Death's gruesome peak. Nice job not coughing up a lung yet. Welcome to Part 3, where the plague starts to ebb, but the wreckage it leaves behind reshapes Europe in ways that scream irony, agony, and the kind of absurdity that makes you question if medieval folks were just winging it. Picture 1,350. The body count's slowing, but half the continent's gone. Villages are ghost towns, and survivors are picking up the pieces while dodging the next wave of fleas. This is the aftermath of history's worst uninvited guest, where survival means rebuilding on a graveyard, and the lessons learned are as fleeting as a plague doctor's promises. Ever had to start over after a total disaster? Drop your story in the comments. Let's see if it tops rebuilding a world on top of mass graves. The Black Death's peak fades by 1350 in most places, but it's not gone, just catching its breath. Europe's lost 30 to 60% of its people, depending on the region. Florence? Maybe 80% wiped out. London? Half. Rural villages? Some vanish entirely. Fields reclaimed by weeds, houses crumbling into mud. The math is brutal. 75 to 200 million dead across the continent. Numbers so big they're hard to grasp. Imagine a bustling market town, 5,000 strong, now down to 2,000, with pits full of neighbors. Survivors walk streets littered with abandoned carts, stray dogs, and the eerie quiet of a world turned upside down. Survival's no picnic. It's scavenging for food in empty homes, praying the plague doesn't flare up again, and wondering if God's abandoned you. The economic fallout is a roller coaster of chaos and opportunity. With half the workforce dead, labor's suddenly in demand. Peasants, once chained to feudal lords, now hold the cards. A plowman in England who earned pennies pre-plague can demand double, even triple, by 1351. Lords sweating in their castles pass laws like England's Statute of Laborers to cap wages at 1346 levels, because nothing says stability like ignoring reality. Spoiler, it flops. Workers ditch manners for better pay elsewhere, or turn bandit because why not? The Peasants' Revolt of 1381, led by Wat Tyler, is a direct result. Serfs storm London, behead officials, and burn tax records, all because the elite tried to squeeze a broken system. The irony? The plague gives the powerless a voice, but only after half of them are dead. Women catch a rare break. Sort of. With men scarce, widows and daughters step into roles as brewers, weavers, even blacksmiths. In York, women run shops. In Nuremberg, they join guilds. But don't get too excited. Wages for women stay lower, and by 1400, patriarchy slams the door shut again. Still, this shift plants seeds for change, like a proto-feminist flicker in a grim world. The pain? A widow might inherit her husband's bakery, only to lose it to greedy relatives or crippling taxes. Survival means navigating a man's world with no safety net, just grit and luck. The church? It's reeling. Priests died in droves giving last rites, leaving parishes desperate. New priests are rushed in, barely trained, some barely literate. They sell indulgences, pocket tithes, and spark resentment that fuels later reformers like Wycliffe and Luther. The Black Death cracks Rome's aura of invincibility. In villages, people whisper about corrupt clergy, and some turn to mysticism or heresy, like the Lollards in England, preaching against church wealth. Art reflects the trauma. Dance, macabre paintings spread across churches, skeletons dancing with kings, bishops, peasants, reminding everyone death doesn't discriminate. German Totentanz poems hammer it home. Live humbly, death's coming. Spoiler, the rich keep throwing feasts, commissioning gilded tombs like nothing happened. Trade takes a hit but rebounds weirdly. The Silk Road, the plague's highway, slows as ports like Venice enforce stricter quarantines. 40 days for ships, a system that sticks, but survivors inherit wealth. In Florence, a merchant's son might get his dad's fortune, sparking a mini-boom in luxury goods. Wool trade in England explodes. Fewer people, more land for sheep. This shift lays groundwork for capitalism's slow rise as money concentrates in fewer hands. The absurdity? The same trade routes that brought death now fuel recovery, as survivors buy silks and spices with their dead relatives' gold. Medicine creeps forward, barely. Quarantine works when enforced. Venice and Dubrovnik pioneer isolation laws, locking sick families in homes or islands. But cures? Still a circus. Bloodletting remains king. Slice a vein, hope for the best, weaken the patient. Plague doctors with their beak masks stuffed with mint are more spectacle than science, charging nobles for leech treatments that do zilch. Guy de Chauliac, a French surgeon, survives the plague and writes a manual. Lance buboes avoid bad air, pray, it's progress, but germ theory's 500 years away. Most cures are superstition. Carry a pomander of cloves, wear a toad amulet, or burn barrels of tar to purify the air. One gem, sleep on your side to avoid plague vapors settling in your chest. Sure, because bacteria care about your sleeping position. The pain of survival is raw. Imagine a tailor in Paris watching his wife and kids die, buboes bursting, no priest to bless them. He buries them himself, hands blistered, heart broken, then goes back to work because starvation's the next threat. Or a nun in Cologne, sealed in her convent, hearing sisters cough through stone walls, knowing death's coming. No antibiotics, no ventilators, just herbs, prayers, and luck. The rich might afford a doctor, but his lancet and astrology charts are as useful as a horoscope in a hurricane. Peasants? Boarded up in huts, red crosses on doors, left to rot. Survival's a lottery, and the odds suck. Social scars run deep. Orphans roam, forming gangs or begging. In London, thieves loot plague houses, often catching it. Karma's swift. Witch hunts spike, as people blame cursed women or lepers for spreading disease. In Savoy, lepers are rounded up, tortured, burned, because scapegoating's easier than sanitation. Jews face worse. In Basel, 600 are burned in a single day, 1349. Entire communities wiped out, despite papal decrees against it. The irony? Killing Jews doesn't stop the plague, just shrinks the workforce and trade networks, making recovery harder. The absurd keeps piling up. Flagellant processions banned by the Pope still limp on in Germany, whipping themselves to appease a god who seems AWOL. In Sicily, towns try banning funerals to stop gatherings, but grief doesn't follow rules. People mourn anyway, spreading the plague. In Oxford, students abandon universities, but taverns stay packed, because if you're gonna die, might as well be drunk. Chroniclers like Jean de Venette in Paris describe nobles dancing at feasts while peasants dig graves, a grotesque split between haves and have-nots. And the children's rhyme? Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, red rash rings, flowers to mask the stench, ashes from pyres, we all fall down. A nursery rhyme born from apocalypse. Let's zoom in. In Siena, a Nolo di Tura's diary aches. Father abandoned child, wife husband, one brother another, for this illness seemed to strike through breath and sight. He buries 5 sons, no tears left. In Dublin, Friar John Klyn writes, "I leave parchment for others, if any survive," then dies. In Avignon, the Pope's fires save him, but his city's a morgue. 50,000 dead, some say. Mass graves overflow, bodies are tossed into rivers. In Norway, the plague lingers in furs traded from Bergen, infecting villages years later. Survival's not just dodging fleas, it's outliving the guilt, the loss, the fear you're next. The irony's thick. The Black Death's a great leveler, but power protects. Kings like Edward III survive, hiding in castles while serfs pile into pits. The church preaches salvation, yet monasteries empty. Trade, the plague's carrier, becomes its cure. Survivors rebuild with wealth from the dead, and the fleas, they don't care about your status, but your odds of survival sure do. What's your move? If you're a 1350s survivor, do you demand higher wages, join a bandit crew, or pray with the flagellants? Comment your strategy. Let's see who'd outsmart the plague. And who's the bigger fool? The doctor with his beak mask or the Lord trying to freeze wages? Spill it. Part 3's done, but the plague's legacy lingers. Part 4 unpacks how Europe rose from the ashes, how the Black Death shaped the Renaissance, and why we're still haunted by its lessons. Like, subscribe, embrace for the final grim, sarcastic dive. Alright, you've trudged through the Black Death's grim parade of fleas, death cards, and medieval quackery. Kudos for not fleeing to the hills yet. Welcome to Part 4, the grand finale, where Europe crawls out of the plague's shadow, forever changed, but still tripping over its own absurdity. Picture 1351. The body count's slowing, but the scars are deep. Empty villages, shattered economies, and a society questioning why God threw such a lethal tantrum. This is the Black Death's legacy, where survival means rebuilding on bones. Irony drips from every decision, and the lessons we learn are ignored faster than a plague doctor's bill. Ever rebuilt your life after a catastrophe? Drop your tale in the comments. Let's see if it beats stitching together a continent from plague-ravaged scraps. The Black Death's main wave fizzles by 1351, but it's not a clean exit. It lingers, popping up in second waves, 1361, 1374, and beyond, each hitting kids born post-plague hardest, as if Yersinia pestis had a vendetta against toddlers. Europe's population is gutted, 75 to 200 million gone, some regions down 60%. Cities like Florence and Siena are half empty, their streets echoing with the ghosts of merchants and monks. Rural hamlets vanish, swallowed by forests, as survivors abandon fields for better odds elsewhere. Survival now means adapting to a world where labor's scarce, faith shaky, and the old rules are as useful as a toad amulet against buboes. Economically, it's a bizarre mix of ruin and reinvention. The labor shortage flips feudalism on its head. Peasants, once dirt cheap, now name their price. In England, a reaper might earn 3 times his pre-plague wage, buying land or livestock instead of slaving for a lord. The elite hate it. England's statute of laborers tries to lock wages, but workers laugh, ditch manners, or turn to banditry. The peasants' revolt of 1381 isn't just a riot, it's a middle finger to a system that didn't see the plague coming. In Italy, survivors inherit fortunes. Dead merchants' gold fuels a boom in banking and trade. The Medici family? Their rise starts here, as Florence's survivors pivot from corpses to cash. Irony alert, the plague kills millions but mints new millionaires. Women's roles shift briefly. With men dead, women take on trades, brewing in London, weaving in Bruges, even running estates. In Paris, tax rolls show widows managing shops, but the pay gap persists, and by 1400, guilds tighten rules to push women out. The pain? A woman might run a bakery only to lose it to a male cousin or a lord's tax. Still, this glimpse of agency plants seeds for later fights. Think proto-feminism, crushed by patriarchy's comeback tour. Survival for women means outsmarting a world that sees you as property, all while dodging the next plague wave. The church, once Europe's rock, wobbles. Priests died at high rates, and replacements are often unqualified. Think shady clerics selling fake relics or indulgences for quick coin. This erodes trust, fueling movements like England's Lollards, who preach against church wealth, or the Hussites in Bohemia, who smell corruption. The Black Death doesn't spark the Reformation, that's 150 years off, but it cracks the foundation. Art screams the trauma. Dance macabre murals in churches show skeletons yanking popes and peasants to the grave, a grim reminder that death's the only equal opportunity employer. German woodcuts and poems like the Totentans obsess over mortality, urging humility. Spoiler, nobles keep building gold-plated tombs, humility be damned, trade rewires itself. The Silk Road, the plague's superhighway, slows as ports like Venice and Genoa enforce quarantines. 40 days for ships, a system that becomes standard. But trade doesn't die, it evolves. England's wool boom turns pastures into profit, laying groundwork for the textile trade that'll drive the Industrial Revolution centuries later. In Italy, plague survivors with inherited wealth splurge on luxuries, silks, spices, art, kickstarting a proto-Renaissance. The irony, the same roots that spread death now funnel riches, as merchants rebuild on the graves of their competitors. The Hanseatic League, a northern trade network, grows stronger, filling gaps left by dead traders. Medicine inches forward, stumbling. Quarantine proves effective. Dubrovnik and Milan isolate the sick, cutting death rates. Hospitals pop up, like Florence's Santa Maria Nuova, funded by guilty rich folks hoping to buy heaven's favor. But cures remain absurd. Bloodletting, leeches, and poultices of dung or crushed emeralds. Plague tracts like John of Burgundy's advise avoiding baths, eating garlic, and praying. Basically, smell bad and hope. Germ theory's a distant dream. Doctors still blame miasma or planets. The beak-masked plague doctor, with his herb-stuffed mask and waxed cloak, becomes an icon, but he's more theater than healer. Survival tip: if your doctor suggests sleeping with a goat, run. The cultural legacy is massive. The Black Death reshapes art, literature, and thought. Boccaccio's Decameron, written in 1353, captures nobles hiding from plague, swapping tales of love and trickery, medieval escapism. Petrarch, another survivor, pushes humanism, urging people to study ancient texts and embrace life, not just fear death. This sparks the Renaissance as artists like Giotto paint vivid, human-centered works, breaking from stiff medieval icons. But the dark side persists. Literature drips with memento mori, remember you'll die. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, written decades later, weaves plague-era cynicism into its pilgrim's banter. The absurd question mark. People embrace life more fiercely because death's so close, yet still cling to old superstitions. The pain of survival lingers. Imagine a carpenter in York, sole survivor of his family, rebuilding a shop while haunted by memories of his kids' blackened bodies. Or a nun in Siena, one of few left in her convent, copying manuscripts to preserve a world that feels lost. Orphans flood cities, some adopted, others turning to crime or begging. In London, guilds take in plague orphans, but many end up as cheap labor. Social trust erodes. Neighbors who abandoned each other during the plague don't easily forgive. Witch hunts and pogroms continue, as people blame minorities for lingering outbreaks. Jews, nearly wiped out in places like Strasbourg, rebuild communities only to face more hatred. Survival's not just physical, it's outliving guilt, fear, and a society that's half mad. The irony's thick. The Black Death's called the Great Leveler, but wealth still buys better odds. Kings like Edward III ride it out in castles while peasants rot in mass graves. The church preaches unity, yet clerics hoard wealth while parishes starve. The plague kills trade, then revives it as survivors spend inherited gold. And the fleas? They don't care about your prayers or status, but your access to clean water or a horse to flee sure does. The ultimate joke, Europe's rebirth, Renaissance, capitalism, science, grows from a catastrophe that nobody understood. The Black Death's shadow stretches far. It recurs in waves. 1665's Great Plague of London, 1720's Marseille outbreak, until sanitation and antibiotics tame it in the 19th century. Its lessons shape modern public health. Quarantine, contact tracing, even masks, echo medieval attempts. But the cultural DNA is deeper. The phrase, "bring out your dead," lives in Monty Python sketches. Ring Around the Rosie haunts playgrounds. Movies like The Seventh Seal wrestle with death's specter, born from plague-era dread. Even today, pandemics remind us how fragile order is. 2020's COVID-19 sparked hoarding, conspiracies, and quack cures, proving we're not so far from 1348. Archaeology backs the story. Mass graves in London's Smithfield or Paris's Les Innocents reveal skeletons with signs of plague trauma, hasty burials, no coffins. DNA from those bones confirms Yersinia pestis, linking it to modern strains. The plague wasn't just a European thing, it hit the Middle East, North Africa, even China, though records there are spottier. The Mamluks in Egypt lost a third of Cairo, weakening their empire. The irony? Global trade, humanity's pride, spread the plague, and global trade rebuilt the world after. Sarcasm time. Medieval Europe faced the worst pandemic ever, and their solution was whipping themselves, sniffing sewers, and blaming Jews. Brilliant. Survivors built a new world, renaissance, trade, ideas, but kept the same old greed and superstition. And us? We've got vaccines and science, yet still fall for miracle cures and panic buying. Slow clap, humanity. The Black Death's lesson. Check your fleas, question your leaders, and maybe don't trust that cure peddled by a guy in a bird mask. Engage, folks. If you are rebuilding Europe post-plague, what's your first move? Higher wages, better sanitation, or a ban on chicken-based medicine? Comment your plan. And who's the era's biggest fool? The flagellant, the beak-masked doctor, or the Lord taxing survivors into revolt? Let's hear it. This plague saga's done, but its echoes linger in our art, our fears, our pandemics. From mass graves to Renaissance masterpieces, the Black Death reminds us, humanity's tough, but stupidity's tougher. Like, subscribe and tell us, what other historical disaster needs our sarcastic lens?